In a certain world, the sky was overcast, crows filled the air, and the heartfelt thoughts of a young man echoed. It had been 40 years since I got lost in this world. A handsome young man wielded his sword, slashing at a monster. Level 1. At the start of the journey, I had absolutely nothing, the young man thought as he fought, continuously swinging his sword at the monster. He leapt into the air, delivering a powerful strike toward the monster below. A surge of immense energy erupted, causing a massive shockwave. A deep trench formed in front of the young man. He sheathed his sword, exhaled in relief, and muttered, "Today, it ends." The young man's stat screen appeared, level 225. Yu Sungwoo, accompanied by 3 others. A striking red notification flashed. The Supreme Demon King has been defeated. Yu Sungwoo and his party, a human priest, an elf archer, and an ogre warrior, rested after the battle. A radiant, divine golden light drew everyone's attention. A golden-haired goddess slowly emerged. "My heroes, I trust you all," she said. The goddess smiled proudly. "I knew you would defeat the Supreme Demon King." The one who appeared was the goddess Gaia. Yu Sungwoo's face darkened as he glared at her angrily. "You're smiling?" Gaia, seeing his reaction, felt a bit uneasy. "What?" he continued, his voice low and menacing. "Are you really smiling right now?" The goddess flinched at his response. His voice carried the weight of resentment. "You granted others extraordinary abilities, powerful weapons, and the strongest teams," he said. At this moment, the goddess's face scrunched up like a monkey's bottom. While channeling aura into his sword, he continued, "But you gave me nothing at all." Gaia, feeling guilty, avoided his gaze. "Well, I didn't have enough divine power because I summoned too many people from other worlds." Yu Sungwoo roared in anger. "Do you want me to cut you down?" The ogre warrior quickly restrained him, and the priest urgently tried to calm him down. "Relax, Sungwoo." Everyone around was terrified by his outburst. Gaia was secretly alarmed. "He's definitely become far too powerful. How could a human even achieve this?" She cleared her throat to break the awkward tension. "Anyway, I want to reward all of you." "What do you want?" The towering ogre spoke first. "I wish to move to the next battlefield. But I hope the reason for going there is both noble and grand." The priest's eyes shone with pride. "I don't really want anything because I've had the privilege of joining an incredible adventure with amazing teammates." Yu Sungwoo pinched his cheek. "Aren't you embarrassed saying that?" The priest grinned innocently. "Why would I be embarrassed? You're the greatest teammates in the world." The elf archer then stepped forward. "The power to travel to any dimension. Grant me the ability to continue using weapons." Gaia hesitated. "I can help with dimensional travel. But as for the weapons, why do you need them?" The elf pointed to the sky. "Isn't it obvious? For the revolution." Behind him, a fiery effect of hope burst forth. With confidence, he declared, "A revolution for the oppressed and the excluded races. Let the light of revolution spread across dimensions. And let us aim our weapons at the ruling tyrants." Yu Sungwoo, standing behind him with arms crossed, nodded in approval. "Yep, that's just like you, Crimson Elf." The golden-haired archer smiled brightly. "Thanks for understanding me so well." Gaia looked at the two and sighed internally. "Stop encouraging each other already." She massaged her temples in frustration. "And you, Sungwoo, what about you?" Yu Sungwoo placed a hand on his chin. Deep in thought, he pondered over what he truly desired. "Money and items? I already have more than I can count. Power and fame? Those are things I can achieve anytime. So I don't even care about them anymore." At level 255, capable of traveling through time and conquering worlds, he thought about the past. His eyes grew melancholic. "What I need most now is..." He remembered the first time he stepped into town as a novice adventurer. Yu Sungwoo. Level 1, filthy and dressed in ragged clothes. His stomach growled loudly, demanding food. Yu Sungwoo clutched his rumbling belly and muttered to himself, "I need to eat something first." Looking around, his gaze was suddenly caught by something unexpected, a restaurant sign. Entering the restaurant, he took a seat and timidly called out, Hey." A man at the next table shouted, "The usual, boss." Taking a cue, Yu Sungwoo raised his hand. "I'll have the same, boss." A moment later, a plate of enoki mushroom stuffed meat rolls appeared before him, emanating an irresistible aroma. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he stared at the glowing plate of food. "Finally, I can eat something decent." Tears of joy welled up as he picked up a fork. "Thank you for the meal," he said, stabbing the fork into a piece of meat. Suddenly, Gaia's voice echoed, "Hero, She continued, her voice escalating from whispers to loud calls. Sungwoo, are you daydreaming about the past? Sungwoo clenched the hand poking his shoulder. Yes, I was reminiscing about the good old days, he said, his tone cold. His face darkened as his gaze turned sharp, emitting an aura of hostility. About the days when I was first summoned to another world, without so much as a single healing potion to my name. Gaia fidgeted awkwardly, as I explained before, but Sungwoo cut her off. I've made up my mind. I want to return to my homeland and open a restaurant. Everyone, including Gaia, froze at his declaration. A restaurant? Gaia finally stammered. Sungwoo replied nonchalantly, I've been thinking about introducing the food from this world to the people of my homeland. The elf archer scratched his ear, as though mishearing. You want to sell the food from this world? Did I hear that wrong? Sungwoo gestured dismissively. It's not a big deal. Earth's food is so common. But selling the fancy dishes from this world? Now that has meaning. Everyone around him stared with exasperation. Are you serious, you lunatic? One muttered. May the people of Earth be blessed by the gods. Gaia looked at him in disbelief. Do you realize what you're saying? Out of all dimensions, this world's food is the worst. At her words, Sungwoo gripped his sword tightly and slammed it into the ground before her, making her flinch in fear. He glared at her, his voice low and menacing. That's exactly why. The group stared at him curiously. Sungwoo's lips curled into a dangerous smirk. If only I had to endure this terrible food. Wouldn't that be unfair? Seoul, a prosperous and peaceful city where the lights remain on even through the night. Somewhere in the city, a giant foot crushed a street lamp under its weight. However, with the sudden appearance of dimensional gates and monsters, the name, Seoul, vanished without a trace. The sky turned crimson as an enormous spatial gate opened, unleashing hordes of monsters that ravaged the city. Atop a skyscraper in Disaster Zone A young man stood on the railing, surveying the chaos below. He fumed, his voice laced with anger. Damn it. A woman approached him, a top 100 ranked hunter. She glanced down at the swarm of monsters and calmly remarked, Please maintain the dignity of a frontline member. Sir Baek Hanghyuk, the young man, revealed to be the superstar operative Baek Hanghyuk, pulled out a cigarette to steady his nerves. He took a long drag and gazed down at the destruction engulfing the city. I can't help but curse, he muttered. And now I have to close that damn thing too? The purple-haired woman replied. No, you don't need to close that low-tier gate. It'll seal itself soon enough. Baek Hanghyuk's face twisted with annoyance. I'm so sick of working overtime. Do you even know what's going on here? The woman responded. This is an S-rank danger zone. Nothing unusual. She sighed. At least, it wasn't until 4 days ago when too many monsters started pouring out. Baek Hanghyuk pointed at a monster below. That's true, but look at that one. It's running as if it's being chased by some deranged beast. The direction he indicated revealed a 3-headed monster running frantically, its heads turning back repeatedly to check behind it. The woman followed his gaze and replied. The second line thinks the same. Min suspects the boss will show up soon. She then reached out and snatched the cigarette from Baek Hanghyuk's hand. And please, stop smoking already. But Baek Hanghyuk deftly dodged her attempt, keeping the cigarette firmly in his grasp. A sudden downpour extinguished Baek Hanghyuk's cigarette. He looked up at the sky, annoyed. Damn it, so irritating. He flicked the cigarette away and turned to leave. If Min said so, then the boss raid will start soon enough. Tell them I'm taking 2 days off. The purple-haired woman stared at him. Taking time off, just like that? At this hour, where are you even going? Without looking back, Baek Hanghyuk replied, I'm not in the mood today. A sly grin crept onto his face. So, I'm going to fill my stomach to save myself from the misery of overtime. The woman gave him a judgmental look. Here we go again. Elsewhere in the city, Baek Hanghyuk stood in front of a restaurant, clearly intrigued. All right, he pointed ahead. I've made my choice, that place. The place he indicated was a restaurant with its lights still on. Holding his stomach, he grumbled. Overtime exhaustion, battle stress, and now an empty stomach. His eyes grew resolute. I've hit my stress limit. Cracking his knuckles, he smirked arrogantly. What if the food is awful? Then they'd better be ready to take that signboard down. He licked his lips mischievously. But if the food is good? A devilish grin spread across his face. I'll berate them for making me eat day and night. As he reached out to open the door, he froze at the sight of a sign. A closed sign hung on the door. Baek Hanghyuk frowned. It's closed? Feigning disappointment, he sighed. "Ha, how unlucky." Grabbing the sign, he muttered, "I can't believe this flimsy board is stopping a visit from." He crushed the sign with his hand. The frontline superstar, Baek Hang-hyuk. With an arrogant kick, he slammed the door open. What a joke. Inside the restaurant, Yoo Sung-woo was deep in thought about running his business. I still haven't signed a contract with a supplier. And I need to buy the remaining equipment. Taking a sip of his coffee, he mused. It's been about 4 days since I arrived on Earth. Smiling to himself, he thought, no rush, I can take it easy for now. He picked up a movie disc and spun around cheerfully, humming, "This is the life, movies and coffee." Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted the piece as Baek Hang-hyuk kicked the door open and barged in. Baek Hang-hyuk adjusted his clothes arrogantly and glanced around. So empty. Seems like there are no customers today. Yoo Sung-woo remained silent for a moment. Turning around, his face darkened as he glared at Baek Hang-hyuk. That's because we haven't officially opened yet. Unbothered, Baek Hang-hyuk sat at a table and scoffed. I don't care. He casually added, just serve me something tasty. Yoo Sung-woo's eyes twitched in irritation. This guy barged in, ruined my movie time, and now he's being rude on top of it? Does this brat have a death wish? Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Yoo Sung-woo observed him closely. Wait, this customer. He glanced at Baek Hang-hyuk, who was tapping the table impatiently. Noticing the stare, Baek Hang-hyuk slammed the table. Huh? What are you looking at? Yoo Sung-woo shook his head dismissively. Nothing. But internally, he was assessing him. Such frail arms. A kick could snap those legs in two. And those eyes. Didn't even notice the closed sign. Poor kid. Probably malnourished for years. Lacking both manners and common sense. His brain must have shriveled up too. Moved by pity, Yoo Sung-woo wiped away a fake tear. What a sad little creature. Baek Hang-hyuk noticed the odd expression on his face and exploded with anger. Why are you looking at me with those pitying eyes? Can't you see my cloak? I'm a frontline superstar. Ignoring the outburst, Yoo Sung-woo opened the refrigerator. Let's see. What's on the menu today? Baek Hang-hyuk banged the table, shouting, Hey, are you mocking me or something? Slumping back into his chair, he grumbled, whatever, just give me something edible already. Yoo Sung-woo scanned the fridge, mumbling, these ingredients might be a bit too intense. His eyes landed on a glowing, fresh piece of meat. Picking it up, he smiled knowingly. Alright, kid, I'll help you out. I'll serve you something truly special. Placing the meat on the cutting board, he explained, this is shoulder meat from a crimson dragon, found between its long neck and wings. If we compare it to pork, it's like premium pork. With precise, practiced movements, he sliced a perfect cut of the meat. Crimson dragon meat contains fire essence, so its flavor is naturally bold. To enhance it, we'll drizzle fruit juice over it for an elegant twist. Today's choice, grape juice. The meat's flavor is already excellent, but this will make it truly unforgettable for my first customer. Smiling as he worked, Yoo Sung-woo thought, as expected, cooking is really fun. Meanwhile, Baek Hang-hyuk, watching him cook, jolted in shock as he heard a faint scream from the meat. Startled, he asked, did I just imagine that? He stared at Yoo Sung-woo's serene smile and asked nervously, I swear I just heard the meat scream. Baek Hang-hyuk stared nervously at Yoo Sung-woo, who was smiling warmly. Did I really hear the meat scream? Yoo Sung-woo, still focused on cooking, casually replied, scream? Nah, probably not. Baek Hang-hyuk wasn't convinced. Are you sure? With a final touch, Yoo Sung-woo sprinkled seasoning onto the steak, placed a stalk of celery beside it, and set the plate in front of Baek Hang-hyuk. All done. A beautifully aromatic steak sat on the table. Baek Hang-hyuk furrowed his brows. Scrutinizing the dish, he glanced up at Yoo Sung-woo, silently sizing him up. I have to admit, this guy is impressive. Yoo Sung-woo smiled at him cheerfully. Breaking the silence, Baek Hang-hyuk smirked arrogantly. Your flambe technique wasn't bad. Your flame skills are decent too. Surprised, Yoo Sung-woo asked, are you complimenting me? Without answering, Baek Hang-hyuk eagerly picked up a knife and fork. Pressing into the steak, he noticed the faint fruity aroma and perfectly seared crust. Grinning, he muttered, this must be amazing. Pausing, he looked up at Yoo Sung-woo. Wait, what's this dish called? Yoo Sung-woo replied with a calm smile. Roy's steak. Baek Hang-hyuk, intrigued, started cutting. Never heard of it before. But let's find out how it tastes. However, As much as he tried, the steak wouldn't yield to his knife. Shocked, he put more strength into it, gritting his teeth and yelling as he struggled. The meat didn't budge. Panting and sweating, he stared at Yu Sungwoo. Hey, why is this so hard to cut? Yu Sungwoo raised an eyebrow. Oh? Standing up, Yu Sungwoo took the plate. Let me cut it for you. He thought smugly to himself. This weakling doesn't stand a chance against this steak. As he sliced effortlessly through the meat, his mind wandered. Kyle Royce. He recalled his time in another world. Standing in a cave, facing a formidable opponent, a massive crimson dragon. The elder of the Crimson Dragon clan and the Demon King's right-hand guardian for 1.800 years. Kyle Royce had been a grueling adversary. It took everything I had to defeat it. Meanwhile, Baek Hanghyuk sat slumped, muttering in despair. Guess knives can't cut through this thing. Huh? But when he looked back, the steak was already perfectly sliced. His eyes narrowed. You cut it already? Yu Sungwoo smiled. You must be tired. Embarrassed, Baek Hanghyuk picked up a piece of steak. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, let me give it a try. He popped the meat into his mouth and bit down. The moment it hit his taste buds, an explosion of flavor lit up his eyes. Suddenly, Baek Hanghyuk collapsed onto the table, his body trembling. Oh. Yu Sungwoo watched with a raised brow. Oh? Baek Hanghyuk abruptly let out a fiery breath. Bawa. Clutching his mouth, he mumbled incoherently. MMMPH. Am I breathing fire? He flailed, his muffled words barely discernible. MMMPH. This doesn't taste good at all. Yu Sungwoo smirked proudly. Of course, I intentionally made it bad. Baek Hanghyuk's eyes blazed with fury. MMMPH. What did you just say? Slamming his hand on the table, Yu Sungwoo declared dramatically. A truly exceptional dish must be eaten for survival and to gain strength. Baek Hanghyuk, clutching his flaming mouth, panicked. Why can't I spit this out? His mind raced. Do I just keep chewing? But it's so spicy. My only option is to swallow it? Resolving himself, he gulped down the entire piece of meat. As the piece of meat slid into Baek Hanghyuk's stomach, his body felt like it was about to explode. His eyes grew heavy, and with a thud, he collapsed flat onto the floor. Yu Sungwoo glanced down at him, smiling calmly, even as he teetered on the edge of unconsciousness. Baek Hanghyuk muttered weakly. It tasted so bad. An hour later, Baek Hanghyuk jolted upright, clutching his throat and coughing violently. He looked over to see Yu Sungwoo lounging on the sofa, yawning lazily, clearly uninterested. Enraged, Baek Hanghyuk leapt to his feet, shouting, You almost killed me. As he yelled, he kicked at Yu Sungwoo. And you're just sitting there yawning? Yu Sungwoo caught his foot effortlessly, surprising Baek Hanghyuk. With a sigh, he said, That's all you got after eating? Pathetic. He thought back to the steak. That was a 3-star meal. Kyle Royce steak, plus 2 HP, plus 3 fire resistance, plus 3 strength, dragon's power unlocked. And this guy can't even handle it. Baek Hanghyuk pointed at himself in disbelief. You're calling me weak? Yu Sungwoo casually flicked his foot away. Yeah, you. The statement left Baek Hanghyuk reeling. He stumbled back in shock. Me? Regaining his composure, he dashed toward Yu Sungwoo, shouting, Weak? I'm Baek Hanghyuk, a frontline hunter. But before he could make contact, Yu Sungwoo extended a finger and flicked his forehead. The force sent Baek Hanghyuk flying backward, crashing to the floor once again. Yu Sungwoo frowned slightly. If you're mad, keep it under control. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. I'm going back to sleep. As he glanced at his phone, Baek Hanghyuk's earlier words lingered in his mind. Frontline? What's with the big talk? Curious, he searched the web and stumbled upon information that made him freeze. The top 100 hunters in the world. The page read. Looking down at the groaning Baek Hanghyuk sprawled on the floor, Yu Sungwoo's eyes widened in disbelief. This weakling is one of the world's top 100 hunters? He sat back, deep in thought. The Earth's doomed, but honestly, I don't feel like getting involved. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Aha, he muttered, his lips curling into a mischievous grin as he eyed Baek Hanghyuk writhing on the floor. The sky was pitch black, shrouded in darkness. With the sudden appearance of spatial gates, a new profession emerged to combat the ever-increasing number of monsters. Hunters, and among them, the top 100 hunters in the world banded together under the name First Order. Amidst the rain, in a modest house, Baek Hang-hyuk was on his knees, bowing deeply, his voice sincere and loud. I truly apologize. Yu Sung-woo, sitting casually in a chair, showed no sympathy. Taking a sip of water, he said calmly, "You're kneeling just because I'm stronger than you?" He leaned forward, peering at Baek Hang-hyuk. "Do you pull this stunt at other restaurants too?" Kneeling below, Baek Hang-hyuk rubbed his hands together nervously, forcing an awkward laugh in response. Seeing this, Yu Sung-woo nodded knowingly, taking another sip of water. "I figured as much. I can see right through you." Pausing, he seemed to remember something, then mused aloud, "Speaking of which, do people wear shoes more often nowadays?" Baek Hang-hyuk's face grew serious. In his mind, he confirmed, "There's no doubt, this guy is a foreigner. If I mess up, he might kill me on the spot." Breaking the tension, Yu Sung-woo set the glass down with a firm clink and said, "Good." Crossing his arms with an air of authority, he continued, "I'm going to turn you into someone completely different from who you are now." Confused, Baek Hang-hyuk blinked. Okay?" Yu Sung-woo's face darkened in displeasure. He explained sternly, "You're part of First Order. You need to become stronger to protect this planet. Right?" Baek Hang-hyuk hesitated, his expression uncertain. But before he could finish, Yu Sung-woo interrupted energetically. "Education is about surpassing limits in both skill and knowledge. It's about guiding someone back to the right path and teaching them to become truly exceptional. Therefore, I'll educate you." Still on his knees, Baek Hang-hyuk stared up with wide eyes, speechless. After a moment, he slumped slightly and muttered, "What if I refuse?" Yu Sung-woo immediately adopted a fearsome demeanor, sending chills down Baek Hang-hyuk's spine. Realizing he couldn't back out, Baek Hang-hyuk quickly raised one hand high and declared, "Please teach me, sir." Pleased with the response, Yu Sung-woo nodded in approval. "HMPH, good boy." He then energetically launched into his lesson. "First, I'll give you some basic knowledge about humans. Humans are loving creatures, yet also pitiable. For example, when you see someone pitiful, you begin to feel pity for them." As Yu Sung-woo went on, Baek Hang-hyuk sat there, helpless, enduring the endless lecture that seemed to pierce his ears like daggers. His internal torment only grew as Yu Sung-woo's words continued to flow relentlessly. At this point, Baek Hang-hyuk, with ears practically bleeding from the endless lecture, rubbed his head in frustration. Bitterly, he thought, "This fossil, this really has no end. By the time he's done, I could probably build a 14-story building with the number of words he's thrown at me." Unable to take it any longer, he blurted out, "Wait, sir, what was your previous job?" Yu Sung-woo replied calmly, "I used to be a high school teacher." Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes lit up with realization. "Philosophy teacher?" Seeing the correct guess, Yu Sung-woo nodded in approval. "Sharp. Your intuition isn't bad." He clapped his hands, resetting the atmosphere. "Now," he said brightly, "you must learn the values and importance of food." Hearing this, Baek Hang-hyuk became agitated and pointed to the dish from earlier. "You're calling that food? Anyone can see it's a chemical weapon." Yu Sung-woo frowned, looking displeased. "Do you think that's something you should say to someone who spent so much time cooking it? You're acting like—" Before he could continue, Baek Hang-hyuk flailed his arms in panic. I get it, please stop." Yu Sung-woo concluded matter-of-factly. "Koreans don't waste food." Reluctantly, Baek Hang-hyuk picked up the plate, his expression resigned. "So, you're saying I have to finish this dish?" Yu Sung-woo nodded serenely. "Exactly." Hearing the confirmation, Baek Hang-hyuk was so shocked he felt his soul leave his body. Grudgingly, he picked up the plate and muttered, "I don't want to eat this. I can't eat this." Standing beside him, Yu Sung-woo placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Smirking, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it." Unable to change his mind, Baek Hang-hyuk, in an outburst of defiance, tried to throw the plate away. "I said no, this isn't even food." But Yu Sung-woo swiftly stopped him and replied calmly, "Isn't there something you shouldn't say in front of the person who cooked it?" Hearing that, Baek Hang-hyuk's tears streamed down his face as he trembled. "I can't." Yu Sung-woo's expression darkened. "You can." What followed was a merciless scene. Yu Sung-woo force-fed the entire plate of food into Baek Hang-hyuk's mouth before he could resist. As the taste hit his palate, Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes widened in despair, and he internally screamed, "Mom!" Shortly after, he collapsed to the floor, defeated. Meanwhile, Yu Sung-woo picked up the empty plate, showing no sympathy as he stared down at him. To avoid any complications, he crouched down, grabbed Baek Hanghyuk by the ankles, and began dragging him away, muttering to himself, if this guy wakes up, he's definitely going to call Hugh and make a scene. As he dragged the unconscious Baek Hanghyuk, he continued thinking, I can't let that happen. I'll make sure he digests all of it. I truly don't want this planet to be destroyed. Yu Sungwoo said, a sinister expression spreading across his face. That's why all of you need to get much stronger. At night, inside Isaac's headquarters, a hand holding a pen tapped lightly on a desk. It belonged to Wang Jihyun, who sat with a worried expression. We've lost contact with him for 2 days now, she said, her voice tense. Nearby, Min O'Keefe stood silently, holding a black dagger. He responded calmly, is that why you called me? She sighed in resignation. It's because it's Baek Hanghyuk. He wouldn't be kidnapped, detained for interrogation, or taken as a hostage. Min quickly replied, of course not. The head of First Order couldn't possibly be weak enough to get kidnapped or defeated. He let out a sigh and added, maybe he's hiding somewhere after causing some kind of trouble, or it could be because of a woman. Wang Jihyun, clearly worried, countered, I'm concerned. We only have 1 day to prepare for combat, and this is a very critical time. Frustrated, Min rubbed his temples. Then, with determination, he sheathed his dagger behind his back. That troublesome fool. I'll go find him. In the meantime, you get everything ready. She sat silently, watching him with a hopeful gaze as he strode out into the rainy night. Min O'Keefe hurried through the darkness, stopping at a particular spot. Clutching his stomach in frustration, he muttered, I really don't want to use this skill to track down someone as annoying as him. Seriously. He knelt on the ground, scanning his surroundings. Closing his eyes, he concentrated. A familiar energy signature emerged, and his eyes snapped open. Standing up, he turned toward the direction of the signal. Found him. At Yu Sungwoo's place. Min arrived, noticing the closed sign hanging on the door. He muttered to himself, what on earth is he doing here? He grabbed the door handle but found it locked. With no other choice, he pulled out his lock-picking tools, thinking, this lock is no match for me. The sound of clicks echoed as he effortlessly opened the door and slipped inside. Carefully, he surveyed his surroundings. He's definitely in the basement, he whispered. As he moved further in, a dark figure suddenly appeared behind him. Sensing the presence, Min turned sharply. It was Yu Sungwoo, his expression unwelcoming. Do you know what trespassing means? Caught off guard, Min stammered. What? Yu Sungwoo's lips curled into a deadly smile. This is just self-defense. In the basement, Baek Hanghyuk was diligently digging. Exhausted, he set his tools down and panted. I might actually die down here. Suddenly, he heard noises coming from the staircase. His eyes widened as he realized. Could it be? Sure enough, he called out excitedly. Min, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd save me. But when he saw Min's expressionless face, his enthusiasm wavered. Rushing forward, he asked eagerly, where's the way out? Min, however, ignored him completely. Confused, Baek Hanghyuk called out again. Min? Min picked up the digging tool. His voice flat. I got caught too. Hearing those words, Baek Hanghyuk's spirit crumbled instantly. In the basement, Hanghyuk and Min were frantically digging a tunnel. After a while, they set their tools down and collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. Min, clearly frustrated, muttered, what the hell am I even doing right now? Hanghyuk, resigned to his fate, replied calmly, isn't it obvious? We're digging a tunnel. Hearing that, Min clenched his fists in anger and shouted, do you think I don't know that? Why did you have to provoke that monster in the first place? Slumping to his knees, Min clutched his aching back. Unbothered, Hanghyuk added, I didn't know it was that strong. It's practically a monster. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he sat down next to Min and continued seriously. Compared to your abilities, how strong would you say that thing is? You've met Hakan before, right? Still grimacing in pain, Min replied, yeah, I've met him. Hakan, the 6th rank in First Order. The returning hero. Struggling to his feet while nursing his back, Min added, but this is on a whole other level. Compared to that level 85 guy, Hasan's strength is just unfathomable. Hanghyuk nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, you're right, there's no comparison. But seriously, are you going to keep working? Aren't you going to take a break? Min, clearly annoyed, snapped back. Take a break? What break? Becoming visibly agitated, he grabbed the digging tool and pointed it at Hanghyuk, yelling, I have to pay back the idiot who pissed off that monster first. But in the end, he couldn't bring himself to act on his frustration. Moments later, Hang Hyuk calmly took the tool back, saying, "Which is why I'm already helping with your share of the work." Still trembling from overexertion, Min struggled to retort, "Shut up, this is all your fault." Hang Hyuk sighed deeply and said, "There's a bigger problem ahead. The boss monster will likely show up soon. And if we're stuck here when it does." Understanding the gravity of the situation, Min reluctantly admitted, "Of course it's a problem. After all, we're the highest-ranked hunters in Zone A." Suddenly, Hang Hyuk's stomach growled loudly, breaking the tension. Embarrassed, he scratched his head and stammered, "Don't look at me like that. I mean, come on, working this much. Of course I'm hungry." Min sighed in exasperation. "You're so carefree. Anyway, let's just apologize to him and ask him to let us out." Startled, Hang Hyuk widened his eyes. "Do you really think he'll just let us go if we apologize?" Min brushed the dust off his sleeves and replied coldly, "Explain the situation to him. He'll understand. Besides," Min's tone softened slightly, "that guy's magical energy, it's strangely pure." Scene change. Yu Sungwoo's perspective. Standing with his arms crossed, Yu Sungwoo said seriously, "Fine, I'll let you out." Hang Hyuk, stunned, exclaimed, "Really?" In contrast, Min quickly bowed his head and said sincerely, "Thank you." Seeing Min's sincerity, Sungwoo turned his gaze toward him and replied calmly, "You're Min O'Keefe, right? I won't bother with honorifics, they're a hassle." Unbothered, Min responded, "That's fine. How do you know my name?" Sungwoo casually pulled out his phone. "I looked it up online," he said, much to the astonishment of the two hunters. After that, Sungwoo tied on an apron and said, "Wait here for a moment. Even though the restaurant hasn't officially opened, it wouldn't be right to let my guests leave with an empty stomach. So, I'll prepare a meal," Yu Sungwoo said calmly. Hearing this, Hang Hyuk slammed the table and yelled, "No thanks, it'll taste bad." Unbothered by his reaction, Sungwoo replied indifferently, "I figured you'd say that. So, let me ask, between a delicious dish and a bad one, which would you choose?" The odd question left Hang Hyuk momentarily confused. What kind of question is that? Who would ever choose something bad? Obviously, the delicious one. Nodding, Sungwoo turned to the kitchen. After glancing over the ingredients, he said, "All right, I'll make foil-baked salmon. I have some leftover salmon fillets for this." Hearing this, Hang Hyuk cheered, raising both hands enthusiastically, while Min seemed a bit skeptical. "You've decided just like that?" Min, appearing thoughtful, continued, "In that case, I'll also." Before he could finish his sentence, a realization struck him. Wait a second, why is he making us choose in the first place? This is strange. I need to think about this. After pondering for a while, Min spoke seriously, "I'll take the bad dish. Please." This left Hang Hyuk speechless and confused, while Sungwoo's eyes lit up with delight. "Oh, someone with a spirit of challenge. Excellent." With that, Sungwoo immediately went to the fridge, retrieved ingredients, and set them on the cutting board. He expertly handled the knife, preparing the ingredients with practiced ease. Selecting a bottle of cooking wine, he poured just the right amount over the prepared salmon fillets. As the fish absorbed the seasonings, he moved on to prepping other ingredients. From a distance, Min observed Sungwoo's professional cooking skills and remarked with admiration, "Impressive." Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk, sitting nearby, couldn't hold back his curiosity. "What were you thinking? Why did you pick the bad dish? Are you an idiot?" Resting his chin on his hand, Min sighed, "I'm starting to regret it too. Your dish looks great." Hang Hyuk, glancing at Sungwoo, added, "Also, isn't it strange? Normally, you'd leave salmon for 5 to 10 minutes to get rid of the fishy smell." Min explained, "Didn't you notice? He's seasoning the fish and pouring wine and salt over it longer than usual. It's a unique way to neutralize the smell." By now, Sungwoo had wrapped the salmon neatly in foil and placed it on a pan. Covering it tightly with a lid, he turned on the heat to start cooking. Looking at the dish in front of him, Yu Sungwoo said calmly, "This is almost done. The rest will be ready after a little cooking." Turning to Min, he asked, "By the way, do you like kidney or liver?" Min quickly replied, "Yes, a little." Then, rubbing his stomach, he added, "But I have a bit of gastritis." Hearing this, Yu Sungwoo looked mildly concerned. "That's not a condition that lets you maintain combat readiness for long periods." Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk couldn't hold back his amusement and smugly teased Min. "Exactly. This guy can't last 5 minutes in a fight without huffing and puffing." Lagging behind, Min, clearly annoyed, clenched his fists in anger. Sensing the tension, Yu Sungwoo placed a thoughtful hand on his chin and said, in that case, you'll need something suitable for a patient. With that, he headed into the kitchen and began selecting the necessary ingredients for a new dish. Before long, he was fully engrossed in preparing a meal for Min. On the other side, Hanghyuk, with a disappointed sigh, muttered, HMPH, I thought he was going to make something fancy. But it turns out it's just porridge. Patting Min on the shoulder, he added playfully, lucky you, Min, it's hard to mess up porridge. After all, Min, still sulking, replied, true. Meanwhile, Yu Sungwoo continued cooking enthusiastically, humming to himself. Soon enough, the dishes were ready, beautifully plated, and presented to Hanghyuk. Seeing the meal, Hanghyuk's face lit up with joy. Finally, this is what I call food. Excitedly, he picked up his chopsticks and grabbed a piece of the dish, quickly popping it into his mouth. The moment he tasted it, his eyes widened in amazement before transitioning to sheer delight. Overwhelmed, he slammed his hand on the table while the other eagerly grabbed more food. Damn it, this is so good. How could someone who cooks this well ever do anything evil? Min, watching his antics, sighed and said, you're spouting nonsense again. Yu Sungwoo, satisfied with the reaction, set a dipping sauce on the table. Alright, enjoy your meal, here's some sauce. Hanghyuk gave him a big thumbs up and replied cheerfully, with the sauce, it's even better. Min, sitting next to him, could only shake his head in exasperation, while Yu Sungwoo, half smiling, said, got it, just don't spill it everywhere. With that, he returned to the kitchen, adding, now then, next. Min tensed up, muttering under his breath, it's my turn. Meanwhile, Yu Sungwoo poured Min's meal into a large bowl. Back at the table, Min grew increasingly nervous, thinking, a bad dish? Why did I even ask for this? In baseball, this is what they'd call a sacrifice play. Resolving himself, Min thought, I'll eat this bad dish and uncover the meaning behind his strange question. Soon, Yu Sungwoo placed the dish in front of Min with a polite smile. It might not look very appetizing, he said, but please enjoy. Min stared at the grotesque dish before him, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Regret started creeping into his mind. Curious, Hanghyuk, still chewing his food, leaned over to glance at Min's dish. Is that porridge? He asked. The bowl of porridge, with its peculiar and unsettling color, remained untouched by Min. Suspicious, Hanghyuk added, did you put uranium in it or something? Annoyed, Sungwoo retorted, no sorry, no uranium. Refusing to drop the joke, Hanghyuk continued, what about energy drinks? Why does it look so weird? He waved his hand dismissively and remarked, this doesn't look edible at all. Min, however, didn't respond. He simply stared intently at the bowl, deep in thought. Seeing no reply, Hanghyuk leaned closer and nudged him. Hey, what's wrong? At this point, Min had noticed something unusual about the dish. Internally, he assessed the color and the way the magical energy ripples. It's unmistakable. This is a dish with the properties of a healing elixir. To create something like this on the spot? Even specialists can't preserve pure magical energy this well. Looking back at Sungwoo, who was smiling warmly, Min began to suspect even more. To confirm his theory, Min hesitantly asked, is this what I think it is? Realizing that Min had caught on, Sungwoo placed a finger to his lips, signaling for secrecy. Min understood the gesture and thought to himself, so I'm not allowed to talk about it. Well, whatever. If I eat this, I'll regain my strength. Let's give it a try. Resolving to taste it, Min took a small bite of the porridge. Instantly, he felt his energy returning, his fatigue melting away. However, along with the revitalization came another realization. Grimacing slightly, he muttered under his breath, why does it taste like iron and lead? Still hesitating, Min stared at the dish before him. If I want to fully recover, I have to eat it all, he thought. Resolving himself, he decided to power through and finish the food in front of him. Meanwhile, across from him, Hanghyuk was enjoying his meal with gusto, savoring every bite. 30 minutes later, Min finally finished his portion. He sat back quietly in his chair, looking as if he had just narrowly escaped death. On the other hand, Hanghyuk, feeling rejuvenated from the delicious food, exclaimed energetically, that was amazing. Huh? What's wrong? Noticing Min's disheartened demeanor, he leaned forward, concerned. You okay? At that moment, Min began to feel the effects of the meal. His body was recovering rapidly, his injured stomach had healed, his energy levels were replenished, and an unfamiliar sense of comfort and vitality spread through him. Min's eyes brightened with newfound life. It's been such a long time since I felt this good. Seeing Min's sudden transformation, Hang Hyuk couldn't help but ask, "What just happened?" Without responding, Min suddenly bowed deeply toward Sungwoo. "Thank you. I'll never forget this kindness." This left Hang Hyuk utterly baffled. "Huh? What's going on?" Sungwoo, pleased with the gratitude, crossed his arms and replied, "It's nothing." Hang Hyuk, still confused by the heartfelt exchange, interrupted, waving his hand. "Hey, wait, what's with this atmosphere? Someone explain what's happening." Frustrated by the lack of answers, Hang Hyuk pointed aggressively with his finger and declared, "Another serving, please." Moments later, a mountain of food disappeared into Hang Hyuk's stomach. Leaning back in his chair, now sporting a large belly, he sighed contentedly. "Ah, I'm alive again." Meanwhile, Min turned serious, fixing his gaze on Sungwoo. "So, if the boss monster shows up at the gate tomorrow, will you help us?" Balancing a stack of plates in one hand, Sungwoo placed the other hand on his chin, appearing deep in thought. About that." Before he could finish, Hang Hyuk draped an arm over Min's shoulder and waved a finger dismissively. "No way." Confused, Min frowned. "What do you mean?" Hang Hyuk pointed toward Sungwoo and explained, "The owner is a regressor. Ridiculously strong. Someone that powerful won't step in to help us fight. The owner has his own reasons." Hang Hyuk continued confidently, "If he wanted to help us fight, he would have just said so." With a smug expression, he winked and added, "He probably doesn't want to get involved because of us." On the side, Sungwoo crossed his arms, listening intently. He seemed surprised that Hang Hyuk had correctly understood his perspective. Meanwhile, Hang Hyuk kept rambling. "If the owner stepped in, the fight would be too easy. But then what? We'd lose the chance to train and become stronger ourselves." Hearing the logic in his argument, Min nodded slowly. That's true." Seeing that he was gradually convincing Min, Hang Hyuk raised one hand excitedly and declared, "So, what I'm saying is this. We must overcome our difficulties and grow stronger on our own. That's what really matters." Sungwoo, standing nearby, clapped his hands lightly in acknowledgement. Oh, it seemed like Min was persuaded, until he suddenly turned back with a displeased look. "That's ridiculous." Hang Hyuk froze, his enthusiasm deflating instantly. "What?" Min seized the opportunity and stepped closer, jabbing a finger at Hang Hyuk. "Cut the nonsense." Beck Hang Hyuk, caught off guard. Hang Hyuk laughed nervously, feigning ignorance. "What do you mean?" Min, growing even more irritated, pointed a finger to his forehead. "If he's as active on the battlefield as you're claiming, the Hunter Association would definitely know about him. He'd have a ranking in first order." The pointed statement left Hang Hyuk momentarily speechless. He averted his eyes, trying to avoid further confrontation. Noticing this, Min pressed on, jabbing his finger harder. "Getting knocked from rank 100 to 101 and losing your spot, aren't you worried about that?" At this point, Sungwoo finally grasped the situation and sighed. "Ah, so that's how it is." Realizing that Min had hit the nail on the head, Hang Hyuk scratched his head sheepishly. "You got me." Min immediately turned to Sungwoo, pointing accusingly at Hang Hyuk. "See? That's the kind of person he is." Sungwoo could only sigh in exasperation. "I won't bother trying to turn him into a respectable person anymore." Leaning on his hand, he continued casually, "But you're not entirely wrong. I've seen many kingdoms that relied too heavily on a single hero. Once that hero fell," he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, "the entire kingdom was doomed." Hearing Sungwoo's warning, Min dropped his argument, standing up resolutely. "If that's the case, we won't trouble you further. Let's go." Beck Hang Hyuk. Hearing this, Sungwoo's expression softened, and he leaned casually against the counter, arms crossed. With a hint of concern, he asked, "Would you like to stop by here more often? I won't charge you." Pointing toward Hang Hyuk, he added with a smirk, "Oh, and Beck, make sure you visit me regularly. All right?" Caught off guard as he was about to leave, Hang Hyuk waved his hands in panic. "No way." Moments later, the two left the restaurant. Outside, under the night sky, the pair walked along the street. Hugging himself, Hang Hyuk slouched and complained, "Even 10 servings is too much for me." Hearing this, Min glared at him and scolded, "10 servings of free food? What are you, a pig?" Unable to take Min's nagging anymore, Hang Hyuk clenched his fists and shouted angrily, "Shut up. That porridge with that smell, it was disgusting." Min sighed, shaking his head in exasperation. "The porridge smelled?" He'll understand one day, Min thought to himself. Today's opportunity was a stroke of luck for me. The next day, on the battlefield, a towering, six-eyed monster roared ferociously, its massive form dominating the landscape. In the distance, Hanghyuk and Min stood observing the beast. From above, helicopters began appearing in the sky. Seeing this, Min looked up and said, "They're here." Hanghyuk, at the ready, Hanghyuk began loading his weapon. Glancing at Min, "You're in good shape, right?" Min, pulling out his dagger and preparing for combat, replied, "Yeah, more or less." Feeling energized, Hanghyuk grinned and said, "All right then." He loosened the top button of his shirt. Rolling his shoulders, the two charged forward together. Excitement in their eyes. "Let's do this." Elsewhere, on a news broadcast, a female reporter spoke with urgency. "This morning, a dangerous new species of monster has been spotted in Zone A." Shortly after, the screen showed footage of the monster lying defeated. The news continued, thanks to the superstar team of Baek Hanghyuk and Orders No. 2. Min O'Keefe, the monster has been eliminated. The broadcast went on. The Korean government has awarded medals to the entire hunting team. However, hunter Baek Hanghyuk declined an interview, citing digestive issues from overeating. Meanwhile, Yoo Sung-woo calmly ate breakfast while watching the news. Unfazed by the mention of Hanghyuk's digestion troubles, he casually praised, "Impressive, good job, good job." Reflecting to himself, he thought, "Honestly, when I head to the gate and the dimensional rift starts fluctuating, the monsters can sense the danger. That's when they migrate to areas without proper barricades, putting civilians at risk." He took a sip of water and continued mentally, "So, hunters like them are essential to protecting this world." Finishing his thoughts, Sung-woo stood up and stretched leisurely. 1 week left until the grand opening, he said enthusiastically, walking toward a nearby window. He gazed at the scenery outside, leaning comfortably on the windowsill. "Let's get ready for today too," he said with a smile. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual. "Huh?" A pair of animal legs walked past, on 2 feet. Curious, he looked closer as the creature approached his door. When it arrived, the animal stood politely and greeted him. "Hello." Startled but maintaining his composure, Sung-woo quickly went to open the door and replied warmly, "Oh, hi there." The creature, carrying a large box, held it up enthusiastically. "Your delivery has arrived." It airfully. The sky was blue. The clouds were white. It was a beautiful day. Inside the house, an adorable cat paw waved in the air. Erupose, with a cheerful expression, said excitedly, "So, can I sit now?" Sung-woo nodded. "Go ahead." With a soft plop, Erupose leapt onto the chair. Though it had the appearance and habits of a cat, Erupose was incredibly intelligent. Happily licking its paw, it showcased its natural talents. As a creature with more taste buds than humans, Erupose was an excellent cook. Its other senses, like smell and hearing, were also far superior to those of humans. Sung-woo rested his chin in his hand, tilting his head as he watched. "And they're always eager to take care of others," he mused. In his mind, he silently listed Erupo's capabilities, everything from housekeeping to field medic. It was almost endless, and their versatility made them an invaluable support to warriors. He paused, recalling some past memories. Then, he chuckled softly. But, because Erupose was so attentive, it often turned warriors into literal gluttons. Sung-woo vividly remembered someone once telling their Erupose, it's fine, I'll just stop being a warrior." Shaking his head, he muttered, "That's why it earned the nickname, the Glutton Maker." There was even a time when two warriors had an endless argument about their Eruposes. "Ours is cuter, isn't it?" "Don't be ridiculous. Ours is way cuter." Sung-woo sighed wistfully. "Back then, I was so envious. I really wanted an Erupose while I was in the army. But," he suddenly yelled into the sky, "Goddess, can't you send me just one Erupose? I'm the only one without a cat." Above, the goddess Gaia snapped irritably, "I'm swamped. If you want one, go find it yourself." The veins on Sung-woo's forehead throbbed as he remembered the moment. "Even now, it still irritates me." With hands on his hips, he glanced down at Erupose. "Anyway," Renato asked for slime pudding. "And you were sent here along with it?" Erupose stared at him with big, round eyes and let out a soft meow. Waving his hand in a calming motion, Sung-woo said, "Listen, I'm not a warrior anymore, I'm a restaurant owner. If your fur ends up everywhere, I won't be able to run this business." Suddenly, Erupose leaned forward confidently. My fur doesn't shed. Go ahead, pull it and see. Surprised, Sungwoo blinked. What? Following its suggestion, he reached out and gave a small tug. To his amazement, no fur came loose. A satisfied smile spread across his lips. Truly versatile. Gently stroking Erupose, he asked, "So, how did you get all the way here?" Erupose puffed up with pride and stood tall. "I defeated a god to get here." Sungwoo stared at it, incredulous. "What?" With an exaggerated smugness, Erupose rubbed its chin and said, "Nah, just kidding." At that moment, Erupose recalled meeting the cat god seated on a grand throne. Trembling, it dared not utter a single word. The cat god, with a cold demeanor, simply said, "No." But Erupose, with sparkling eyes, gazed pleadingly at the cat god, silently begging, "Please, oh great cat god." The cat god, however, turned away indifferently, leaving Erupose utterly shocked. "Stop trying to look cute. You're a dangerous creature." Tears streamed down Erupo's face like rain. "But the cat god sighed heavily. "It's not that I don't care. But I have no idea just how dangerous you might be." Hearing this, Erupose quickly stopped crying and struck a self-absorbed pose. "Well, it's because I'm super cool. Way cooler than other species." The cat god was left speechless, choking on its words. With furrowed brows, the cat god finally thought, "I have to let it go. If I don't, it'll just run off to find another warrior anyway." Under the shade of a lush green tree, Erupose sat dejectedly at the base of the trunk. "Why haven't I met any warriors yet? This is so unfair." Suddenly, a blue butterfly fluttered by, catching its attention. "Is it me?" The butterfly gently landed on a flower but quickly flew away again. Erupo's gaze remained fixed on the butterfly as it disappeared into the distance. It suddenly had an epiphany. "I see now. I'm not compatible with warriors." Its eyes lit up with determination. "No, it's because I'm not skilled enough yet." From that day forward, Erupose began training relentlessly. Punch after punch landed on a scarecrow as it shouted with vigor. Cat punch. In addition to physical training, it diligently studied all kinds of books, determined to master both martial and academic arts. "I'll become stronger and smarter. I'll become a super cat," it vowed. After hearing the story, Sungwoo could only manage a strained smile. "So, because of all that training," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "you defeated the cat god? Is that what you're saying?" Erupose stood proudly, hands on its hips. "Exactly." Sungwoo felt a sudden headache forming. Why on earth did Renato send this thing here? His face darkened slightly as he muttered to himself. Only Gree and Theo could possibly understand this level of suffering. Glancing at Erupose, Sungwoo sighed. "This cat is something else." Out loud, he said with a weary voice, "But I've already retired." Erupose stared at him with sparkling eyes, and beads of cold sweat began to form on Sungwoo's forehead. Sungwoo turned his head and cleared his throat softly. If you want to work here, I'll hire you." Erupose leapt into the air with excitement. "Thank you." Jumping down from the chair, it walked up to Sungwoo, bowed respectfully, and said, "I'll be in your care from now on." Sungwoo, smiling brightly, gestured toward a spot nearby. "Over there, please." As Erupose moved, Sungwoo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Since your name is Niobe, your nickname should be." He smiled and patted its head gently. "Nabi, let's work hard together from now on." Nabi. And with that, the Warriors' Diner officially gained a new employee. From afar, two shadowy figures lurked behind a large wall, spying on the diner. The tall, slender man was Vane Otae Sik, the owner of a nearby cafe. The other, shorter figure was Park Dal-soo, the proprietor of Lejong. Both were using binoculars to closely observe the diner. Park Dal-soo muttered under his breath. "That shop." It appeared out of nowhere. Lowering his binoculars, he added grimly, "Business is war." Otae Sik immediately replied, "Like a game of capture the flag." "So," Dal-soo continued, "this new restaurant is the enemy." Resolute, the two men strode purposefully toward the diner. "In that case," Dal-soo said, glancing at Tae Sik, "let's defeat this enemy together." The two men stared intently at Sungwoo's restaurant, determination gleaming in their eyes. "Let's destroy the enemy," said Dal-soo, furiously rolling up his sleeves. "Do you see that?" he growled, pointing at the coffee machine visible through the window. Tae Sik's expression turned sly. "It looks like a very expensive coffee machine." From the outside, both glared at the restaurant in displeasure. A diner serving coffee? How pretentious. Tae-6 snapped. Is he trying to one-up the great cafeo? Without needing further discussion, both came to the same conclusion. Should we use the same tactic as before and hit them with a first strike attack? Like with that other cafe? Good idea. But just then, they noticed a bouquet of flowers outside the restaurant. Huh? 2 congratulatory cards adorned the bouquet. One read, "Please serve only delicious food, Baek Hanghyuk." The other, "Congratulations on the opening, Min O'Keefe." Both men froze as they read the names. Trembling. Number 1 on the order. Baek Hanghyuk. Number 2, Min O'Keefe. Dal-soo stammered. They've already established relationships with those big names? Tae-6 muttered, his voice shaking. Dal-soo, frustrated, yanked at his scarf. Looks like someone's been playing dirty. Courting customers at the gate behind our backs. The two exchanged worried glances. Their faces reflected a mix of dread and resolve. This isn't good, Dal-soo said, clenching his fists. That restaurant, it's too much of an eyesore. Let's regroup and prepare properly before coming back. In a flash, the two shadows darted away. Just as they were retreating, 2 small fingers tapped lightly on the window. Startled, they turned to see Nabi standing there, waving cheerfully. Are you 2 customers? Nabi asked, its eyes sparkling with friendliness. Tae-6 leapt back in surprise. Ah, erupos. Dal-su's jaw dropped. An erupos that can talk? Nabi's eyes brightened. Oh, you're customers. Please, come in. Before they could protest, the nimble erupos had already ushered them inside with quick, fluid movements. Seated in the restaurant, the 2 men sat in stunned silence, observing Nabi as it bustled around, preparing the table. Leaning over, Dal-soo whispered, Mr. Park, that erupos, it's definitely a monster. Right? Tae-6, watching nervously, muttered, not a monster. No, it looks like a trained beast person. Dal-soo smirked and waved dismissively. Well, that's fine. I'll show it what real class looks like. Reaching out, he swiped a finger across the table. He inspected it and froze. Impossible. What, did you find fur? Tae-6 asked. Dal-soo stared at his spotless finger in disbelief. Not a speck of dust. Both men glanced around the restaurant, their heads swiveling as they took in the gleaming cleanliness. This place, it's too clean. Dal-soo muttered, his voice cracking. Tae-6 clutched his head in despair. I've run places that violated health codes 3 times, and even I can't find anything to criticize here. How is there not a single hair anywhere? Just then, Nabi placed 2 glasses of water on the table with meticulous care. I don't shed fur, it said brightly, adjusting its apron. Both men, drawn in by curiosity, reached out to touch Nabi's fur. You really don't shed? But it's so soft. Tae-6 looked around, still baffled. Even if that's true, this place is too clean. Maybe they hire a cleaning company? Nabi, without missing a beat, replied, cleaning is my job. Tae-6 stared at it for a long moment, his expression one of utter defeat. Finally, he muttered, I'm so jealous. I need an erupos like this. Breaking the silence, Nabi cheerfully held up a menu. Please, place your orders. Dal-soo gestured subtly with his hand, signaling. First attempt to find faults failed. Let's move on to the second plan. Tae-6, sharing the sentiment, gave a nod of agreement. Dal-soo cheerfully placed his hand on the menu. We'll have the special of the day. 2 plates, please. Nabi, brimming with enthusiasm, quickly noted down the order and ran off. Got it, I'll let the chef know. Sung-woo emerged from the kitchen, looking curious. They ordered the special? I see. The 2 men watched him intently, whispering among themselves. The owner's an ex-hunter? He's so good-looking. Tae-6 turned sharply. Startled, what did you just say? Before Dal-soo could reply, their attention was drawn to Sung-woo lifting a heavy wok high into the air. His sleeves carefully rolled up. Dal-su's eyes sparkled with admiration. Look at those arms. He stared at Sung-woo's biceps, astonished. That's a traditional Chinese wok, it's super heavy. How can he lift it so effortlessly? Like a painting come to life. Tae-6, exasperated, slammed the table. Mr. Park, I respect your aesthetic tastes. But have you forgotten why we're here? Focus. Feigning a cough to regain his composure, Dal-soo muttered, I'm just impressed by his skill. That's all. But his gaze betrayed him as he continued sneaking glances at Sung-woo. Captivated by his precise movements. Sung-woo, meanwhile, concentrated on stir-frying the squid rice dish. Under Dal Su's intense observation, every action seemed deliberate and graceful. Dal Su murmured, "This is the first time I've seen someone put so much focus and care into cooking, with such gentle precision." From the corner of his eye, he noticed the effortless way Sungwoo handled the wok. The combination of skill, effort, and enjoyment radiated through his every gesture. Nabi soon returned with 2 plates. Carefully balancing them, with a cheerful tone, it announced, "Today's special is stir-fried squid rice." The large plates featured a blend of bright red and white colors, with an aroma that hinted at a mild spiciness. The 2 men examined the dishes closely. "I didn't expect it to be stir-fried squid rice," said Tae Sik. "Right," Dal Su added. "The menu did say it would be based on the ingredients available that day." Lifting one plate to inspect it closely, Dal Su noted, "The ingredients are so clear and fresh. It'd be hard to claim any allergy complaints against this." Their unspoken agreement was clear. Next up was the taste test. Both men scooped up a spoonful of the dish, tasting it in silence. Breaking the quiet, Tae Sik asked, "Well, what do you think?" Dal Su's expression softened as he admitted, "It's good, really good." Encouraged, Tae Sik took another bite. "Let me try." Without another word, the 2 men focused solely on finishing their meals. As the last spoonful disappeared, they set their spoons down on now empty plates. Leaning back in their chairs, they clutched their satisfied bellies. "It's truly delicious," Dal Su said with a contented sigh. "Absolutely," Tae Sik agreed, equally full and impressed. Dal Su wiped his mouth with a napkin, smiling as he said, "That guy is sincere about the basics. If you're Korean, you can't deny the taste of this dish." Tae Sik, equally cheerful, chimed in, "He's running a business with coffee and light meals, which is quite different from how we operate." Dal Su nodded in agreement. "It's also different from my Western-style restaurant." Feeling lighter after their meal, the 2 handed their payment to Nabi. "This place isn't bad at all," Dal Su admitted. "I think so too," Tae Sik replied with a grin. Standing by the door, Nabi waved at them. "Please come again." The 2 men waved back comfortably as they departed. Even as they walked away, their conversation lingered in the air. "Maybe we should come here more often," one suggested. "Shouldn't we bring him something next time to build goodwill?" the other replied. Inside the restaurant, Sungwoo glanced at a piece of paper in his hand, smiling faintly. Nabi, curious, leapt up beside him. "What's that?" He handed the paper to Nabi and explained. "It's a blacklist from Kanghyuk. Their names are on it." With a proud look, Sungwoo added, "I won them over with just stir-fried squid rice. Isn't that impressive? Warriors truly are the best." Chuckling softly, he lifted his cup. "You've got to value your neighbors." Through the window, the silhouettes of Dal Su and Tae Sik could be seen, strolling away with cheerful expressions. Sungwoo muttered to himself, "From the start, I planned my operation so I wouldn't step on anyone else's toes." The sky outside remained a brilliant blue, almost as if in agreement with the harmony he sought. "Coexistence is important," he mused. "Even if I've retired, I can't entirely abandon the habits of a warrior." The massive outdoor arena was packed with a roaring crowd. The cheers echoed endlessly, drawing in waves of people. Sungwoo stood in the center of the arena, his face weary and his body covered in wounds. Panting heavily, he tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. "It's so heavy." The deafening cheers from the stands continued unabated, urging him on. "Kill him." The audience, brimming with excitement, chanted in unison, "Kill him! Kill him!" He turned his gaze upward to the wild crowd. Their fervor showed no care for his struggle, they only wanted blood. Looking back at his opponent, he saw the man clutching a wound on his abdomen. Visibly weakened, the man panted heavily, grimacing as he spoke weakly. "Just do it." Yu Sungwoo wiped the dirt off his face and lowered his head briefly. A second later, he raised his sword high, his face filled with a sudden surge of killing intent. The crowd held their breath as he swung the blade with immense force. A single, decisive strike cutting through the air. The blade, however, landed not on his opponent but embedded itself into the ground beside him. His opponent, who had shut his eyes tightly in resignation, slowly opened them, realizing the blade had missed him. Looking up, he saw Yu Sungwoo standing over him, shielding him. Sungwoo glanced down and smiled faintly. "I'm not doing it. I'm done with this. We're nothing more than slaves to war." The crowd, dissatisfied with his refusal, erupted into boos and hurled scraps of paper into the arena, jeering loudly. Sungwoo didn't react to their scorn. Instead, clutching his rumbling stomach, he quietly knelt and collapsed onto the ground. He tilted his head back, gazing wearily at the sky as paper littered the battlefield. I really want some kimchi soup right now, he muttered. Present time. A bowl of kimchi soup, now empty, was carefully set down on the table. Min O'Keefe, cheerful and content, wiped his mouth. That was fantastic as always. Teacher. Sungwoo, sitting silently across from him, stared into the distance with a blank expression, seemingly lost in thought. Min waved his hand in front of Sungwoo's face to snap him out of it. Teacher? Sungwoo flinched slightly and replied awkwardly. Oh, it's nothing. I was just remembering something from the past. At that moment, Nabi appeared and picked up the empty bowl. The kimchi soup was delicious. Sungwoo chuckled warmly. Is this your first time trying it? Min, sipping the coffee Sungwoo handed him, grinned. I'm American, remember? I'm still not fully used to kimchi. Outside, the rain poured down in a steady, melancholic rhythm, yet inside the atmosphere was cozy and warm as the three of them enjoyed their time together. Min glanced around the restaurant, taking in the peaceful ambiance. It's really nice and tranquil here. Finishing his drink, he stood up, ready to leave. That was great, teacher. Thank you. As he reached the door, Min suddenly remembered something. Oh, there's one thing I should mention. Turning back, he added, every weekend, officials from the city hall conduct inspections. Hearing this, Sungwoo's expression shifted into one of mild surprise. Inspections? For what? Min walked over to Nabi, smiling as he explained. They'll be checking to make sure there aren't any risks or dangers to the citizens. That's the reason for their visits. Sungwoo furrowed his brows, trying to recall something. Last time, they mentioned something about supporting regressors, but I didn't catch much else. Min laughed, patting Nabi affectionately on the head. That's because Nabi here is technically a worker now. Nabi purred happily, wagging its tail in response. As the three shared a light-hearted moment amidst the rainy evening, Sungwoo stood up, ruffling Nabi's fur playfully. Regressors are victims of gate accidents. They're treated kindly for a reason. Many of them were sent to this world under strange circumstances, so it's only right to be considerate. You're doing great. Min O'Keefe glanced at him, a bit uneasy, while Sungwoo tidied up the dishes. The inspectors today, are they also regressors? Sungwoo asked. Let's hope there won't be any incidents. As the afternoon sunlight cast a warm glow over the restaurant, Nabi's tail swayed cheerfully as it swept the area outside the entrance. Suddenly, a man's voice called out from behind. Hey there. Startled, Nabi leapt into the air with a yelp. Oh my gosh, why are you sneaking up on me like that? The man scratched his head sheepishly. Sorry, my job's a bit unusual. Did I scare you that much? Terribly, Nabi huffed, swatting him lightly with the broom. I'm Park Sunghin, he said, looking a little awkward. I'm really glad to meet an Erupose. But, I'm sorry for startling you. Nabi blinked in surprise. You know about us? Of course, I always wanted to be a warrior. Sunghin admitted, smiling. Nabi's ears perked up, and it jumped excitedly. Really? A warrior? Nice to meet you. So, are you working now? Nabi's enthusiasm quickly faded as it glanced back at the restaurant. Its expression grew serious. When he's in his movie-watching mode, it's absolutely forbidden to disturb him. Sunghin, noticing the closed sign on the door, looked disappointed. Nabi, moved by his downcast expression, felt a pang of sympathy. Suddenly, an idea lit up in its mind. But if you're hungry, Nabi began, wagging its tail, I can cook for you personally, just not as part of the restaurant. Sunghan's face lit up as he clenched his fists in excitement. An Erupose cooking for me? What an honor. Nabi, brimming with confidence moments earlier, began to tremble at his request. Kimchi soup, you said? Yes, Sunghin repeated cheerfully. Kimchi soup, please. Nabi scrambled nervously, darting around. Kimchi soup, oh boy. This is a bit much for an Erupose. I can cook, but kimchi is still pretty foreign to me. Let me try. Dragging a chair to the counter, Nabi climbed onto it to work at eye level. With careful movements, it began slicing pork. The ingredients, kimchi, pork shoulder, and a few other basics, were soon prepared and placed into a large pot. Nabi meticulously added the pork pieces and started the broth. This part's easy, Nabi muttered to itself, staring at the bubbling pot. Its confidence wavered as it glanced nervously at the array of spices nearby. But, I don't know how to season this. Panicking, Nabi dumped every spice into the pot at once, wiping the sweat from its brow. It sighed in relief. There, that should do it. Just need to add some vegetables. Suddenly, it froze. Oh no, onions. Scrambling frantically, Nabi grabbed an onion and triumphantly exclaimed, "Onions are the key. Yes, this has to be right. Or maybe green onions." After throwing the onion into the pot, Nabi slumped onto the floor, utterly exhausted. Park Sung-hin crouched nearby, glancing at Nabi with a mix of pity and concern. "Something feels off," he said hesitantly, peering into the pot. "I think so too," Nabi mumbled from the floor. Defeated, Park Sung-hin stared at the concoction. It's basically kimchi porridge at this point. Still, he looked at Nabi with a gentle smile. "But it's the thought that counts. Thank you for your effort." The door creaked open. Yu Sung-woo stepped out, puzzled by the scene before him. Huh? He observed the situation with a frown. "Doesn't look like a regular customer." "A friend?" Nabi quickly responded. "He's a guest visiting from Terra." Park Sung-hin stood up hastily, bowing slightly. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. I'm Park Sung-hin, a regressor." Sung-woo looked at him closely, noting his haggard appearance. "He looks just as worn out as Min did. Must have had a rough time in Terra." With a soft smile, Sung-woo stepped forward, slipping on his jacket. "I get it now. You're here for kimchi soup, right?" Sung-hin began to rise, shaking his head. "The restaurant's closed, so I wasn't planning to bother you. This place, it feels like something you've opened just for yourself. Like a kite drifting freely in the wind." Sung-woo reached out, taking the bowl Nabi had prepared. "In that case, let me make you a proper dish. You'll eat what I cook instead of Nabi's version. Alright?" Sung-hin blinked in surprise but nodded. "Yes, of course." Sung-woo walked toward the kitchen with calm determination, rolling up his sleeves as he went. "This is the first meal for a regressor in my restaurant." His steps were deliberate, his focus unwavering. "I have to make sure it's done properly. Nothing but the best hospitality will do." Yu Woo stepped into the kitchen and lit the gas stove. He then carefully took out a piece of pork and began slicing it. It was front leg meat, also known as shoulder meat. He swiftly and precisely sliced the meat. Carefully, he placed the meat into a hot pan of oil. Although inexpensive, this cut was not to be underestimated. The meat was carefully placed into the hot oil. Despite being slightly chewy, it had an incredibly rich flavor. After adding the meat, Yu Woo quickly turned up the flame. As the aroma of the sizzling meat began to fill the room, it made him smile. Stir-frying would certainly enhance the dish further. At that moment, Nabi peeked through the doorway, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she watched him. Yu Woo chuckled and called out, "Don't just hide there, come in. I'll teach you." As the meat started to brown, he quickly added kimchi to the pan, followed by the shoulder meat. Mixing it all together, he then grabbed a spoonful of bean paste and added it to the pan, patiently explaining to the wide-eyed Nabi beside him. "Adding soybean paste helps reduce the strong pork smell," he said. Yu Woo carefully explained the trickier steps. "You can also use cooking wine, but some people skip this step. Moreover, kimchi already contains a lot of garlic, so it can serve as a substitute." Nabi nodded in understanding, her hands clasped in approval. She looked up and asked, "So adding soybean paste makes it edible for people sensitive to alcohol? Like in some religions where wine isn't allowed, garlic in kimchi is often the go-to substitute." Yu Woo smiled and added some pre-chopped seasoning and other flavor enhancers into the mix. Once everything was ready, he glanced at the now diligent Nabi. "That's it, it's done." Her eyes lit up as she jotted down notes, underlining and marking key steps. Excitedly, she jumped up with the recipe in her notebook. "I can make kimchi stew now. I'll try it next time." The dish was quickly brought out and placed before Park Sung-hin, who looked at the meal in bewilderment. After a moment, he shyly glanced up and asked, "It seems like I'm not the only one craving this dish. You're too, aren't you?" Yu Woo wiped his hands and smiled. "Strange, isn't it? Back on Earth, I didn't think much about it. But since coming to this world, I've craved it constantly." "I understand." The metal spoon dipped into the glistening stew, and Park Sung-hin took a full spoonful into his mouth. His eyes welled up with tears. Yes, this is it. From deep within his subconscious, a memory surfaced, a simple yet aromatic family meal. As he chewed, tears streamed uncontrollably down his face, his shoulders trembling. "This taste, it's home." He choked out. Tears flowed freely as he whispered, "I'm back." After finishing the meal, Park Sung-hin quietly recounted, "I've been on Terra for 13 years. Nabi tidied the dishes nearby. 13 years, she murmured. Park Sung-hin lowered his head in exhaustion. 6 years have passed here. Yu Woo reflected on his own experience and sighed. I spent 40 years there. But only 9 years have passed here. There really are no rules to this. After calming himself, Park Sung-hin raised his head and said, I'm a level 5 hunter. Yu Woo looked at him and quickly recognized. A veteran, huh? Are you a silver-ranked adventurer? Exactly, Park Sung-hin replied, standing up from his seat. He walked to the window and said, This place is different from Terra. The system here for handling monster gates is flawless. As he spoke, his voice grew quieter, and his expression more solemn. It makes me miss Terra even more. Yu Woo looked at him in surprise. Wait, you mean, you didn't come back because you wanted to? Park Sung-hin turned and smiled bitterly. While exploring an underground dungeon, I was struck by a banishment spell. Yu Woo's eyes widened. So you didn't return voluntarily? You were expelled by a spell? He thought back to the banishment magic he'd heard of before. Spatial banishment magic forcibly ejects its target from a space. After a moment of contemplation, he said, in terms of spatial dimensions, Earthlings are likely expelled back to Earth. Yu Woo placed his hands on his hips and smiled. Well, that's incredibly lucky, but it wasn't like that for me. Park Sung-hin lowered his head in silence. Lost in thought, Yu Woo observed his expression and quickly understood. So that's it. That's where your home is. Sung-hin. Park Sung-hin stared at the door and sighed. I have a wife and even Erupo's waiting for me there. Closing his eyes, he reminisced. 13 years. It's a number long enough to change a homeland. In his fragmented memories, he saw a woman, Baek Hanghyuk, and a white Erupo's waving goodbye. Suddenly overcome with emotion, he slumped to the ground, sobbing. Hick. Nabi approached and tried to console him with a cloth, though her panic was evident. Yu Woo, watching the scene, turned his head in slight disdain. Then, extending his hand, he asked, Do you want me to send you back? Park Sung-hin raised his head. Startled, Yu Woo patiently repeated, I'm asking, do you want me to send you back to Terra? Is that possible? I'd want nothing more than to return. Park Sung-hin stammered, his voice filled with disbelief. Yu Woo smiled and snapped his fingers. All right, then. A large, glowing vortex instantly appeared at Park Sung-hin's feet. Park Sung-hin stared at it in shock. Utterly bewildered. What's happening? On the other side, Yu Woo remained calm and offered a simple farewell. It was nice meeting you. As soon as the sentence ended, the glowing vortex pulled Park Sung-hin through, and his screams echoed as he fell from a great height. The portal closed, but his cries still lingered faintly. Yu Woo glanced at the now quiet portal and brushed off his hands. I really hate seeing people cry, he muttered, but hey, it worked out. If someone shifts between dimensions automatically, then the goddess. He turned away mid-thought. He wanted to go back, so I sent him. If the goddess shows up, I'll deal with her. Their problems aren't my concern. He walked off but paused to call back. Anyway, good work, Nabi. Now shut the door, alright? Got it, Nabi replied, closing the door. She brought over a pot of kimchi porridge and suggested, This failure of mine, I'll give it to the slime pudding in the basement. Yu Woo stepped forward, took the pot, and smiled. No way, I'll eat this. Master. No, don't, Nabi protested, horrified. Yu Woo chuckled. It's fine. Deep in his memories, he recalled the days he spent imprisoned. He saw himself slumped in exhaustion in the depths of a prison cell. A pair of dark hands lightly tapped on the bars, and a voice called out. A man smiled at him. Did you know today marks your 200th day in the arena? Yu Woo scowled and raised his head. John, why would I care about that? John smiled helplessly and said nothing, instead pushing a pot and spoon through the bars. A gift, kimchi stew. Right? Yu Woo smiled faintly. Where did you get this? John rested his hands on his hips and laughed heartily. In this world, people treat kimchi as a necessity. I bought it with a coin. When I told them I wanted to make stew with it, this is what they gave me. Yu Woo burst out laughing in response. Kimchi? A necessity? No way, it's a masterpiece. He eagerly opened the pot in front of him, his anticipation high, but his smile faltered as he stared inside. John, this isn't kimchi stew. What is it, then? Looking at the contents of the pot, Yu Woo realized, this is kimchi porridge. John's face twisted in dismay. I was tricked? Still, Yu Wu smiled up at him. Thanks anyway. I wanted to try this, too. John laughed heartily, extending a hand. Then it's your lucky day. Eat plenty and make sure you survive for the next round. As John walked away, Yu Wu devoured the porridge in a rush. Back in the present, faced with Nabi's dish, Yu Wu sighed. I thought you'd added green onions. But it was onions all along. Now I know. He ate quietly, savoring the porridge in the stillness of the room. Glancing toward the nearby door, Yu Wu thought, I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? He recalled his past, mercilessly slaughtering in the arena, throwing people from this world into the pit for sport, and the screams of enraged nobles battling for their lives. But then, John's smiling face appeared in his mind. A stark contrast, a symbol of the gentleness of kind-hearted people like him. The bowl of kimchi porridge was soon emptied. Yu Wu sat quietly, staring at the empty bowl. If John hadn't appeared back then, a thought struck him. I would have become a monster who only knew how to kill, not a warrior. Shrugging off the heavy reflection, he looked at the now empty bowl and muttered, delicious, even if it'll give me a stomachache. In the bustling wholesale market, crowds of people bustled about, and laughter and chatter filled the air. The market offered everything imaginable, attracting visitors of all ages who eagerly browsed and picked through the goods. Yu Sungwoo walked leisurely, eating while Erupo's Nabi trotted alongside him. Looking around, he commented, this place hasn't changed much, though a few spots look like they've been rebuilt. He turned to Nabi with a smile. Do you want to eat anything else? With excitement, Nabi replied, let's finish this hot dog first. Then we can think about it. Suddenly, something caught Yu Sungwoo's eye, a neatly arranged display of spice boxes on a shelf. An essential feature of traditional markets. Nearby, stacks of food containers were piled in a cozy corner, evoking the charm of being surrounded by so many foods for sale. He remarked, shopping at markets is much more fun than supermarkets. So, what do you want to buy? Nabi darted ahead enthusiastically. Let's go treasure hunting. At a vendor's stall, both of them stood with their hands on their chins, looking thoughtful as if pondering what to pick. After a while, Yu Sungwoo turned away, shrugging, nothing here really catches my eye. But Nabi suddenly froze, sensing something, and turned to look. Without a word, she darted off, leaving Yu Sungwoo standing there, bewildered. Nabi pointed to a massive object in front of her. What about this? Yu Sungwoo ran over, touching the enormous item. A clam? This is the biggest one I've ever seen. But then he hesitated, realization dawning. Wait a second, it looks familiar. His eyes widened as he shouted, no way. Is this a Haragigas? Haragigas clams were known to be used by the Giantes people for entertainment. Curious, Yu Sungwoo turned to the shopkeeper. Excuse me, can you tell me about this clam? The shopkeeper waved her hand dismissively. I'm not sure. My husband picked it up somewhere and brought it home. Shocked, Yu Sungwoo asked, picked it up? This thing must weigh over 200 kilograms. The shopkeeper burst into laughter. My husband's considered a strong man among hunters. You know, running his hand over the clam's shell. Yu Sungwoo felt its timeless majesty. It's definitely a Haragigas, he murmured, smiling. He made his decision. I'll buy this clam. The shopkeeper placed her hand on the clam and said seriously, young man, no matter what you do, you won't be able to open this. It's purely for decoration. Unfazed, Yu Sungwoo gestured toward a pile of mackerel beside the clam. No problem, I'll take 10 mackerel in this clam. Surprised, the shopkeeper asked, 10? That's quite a lot. Scratching his head awkwardly, he replied, I run a small restaurant, so I'll need them. The shopkeeper's expression turned incredulous as she pointed a finger at him. Are you crazy? Only 10? That's not nearly enough for a restaurant. She enthusiastically started selecting more fish for him. Take these as well, and these. Nabi clapped in delight as the shopkeeper piled up their haul. Finally, with the massive Haragigas clam slung over his shoulder, Yu Sungwoo said his goodbyes. Thanks, I'll come again next time. The shopkeeper laughed. You look even stronger than my husband. Back home, the two stood frozen, staring at the enormous clam. Unsure of what to do, Yu Sungwoo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It's definitely an impressive ingredient. But how should we handle it? He slapped the clam's shell and suggested. First, let's try opening it, shall we? Nabi nodded enthusiastically. Great idea. Grabbing the clam with both hands, Yu Sungwoo tried to pry it open. The residue from the sea made it difficult to budge. But still, he pressed on, furrowing his brows and using all his strength. Suddenly, The clam's mouth sprang open wide. Both of them stood there, jaws dropped and eyes wide in astonishment. "Oh my gosh," they exclaimed in unison. The shimmering, glowing pearl inside the clam shell caught his attention. The scallop was even larger than Nabi, who nodded in agreement. He grabbed a prepared knife from the side. "If it's a scallop, we have to make sashimi." He carefully sliced a thin piece and dipped it into a small ceramic bowl filled with soy sauce. He smiled in satisfaction, feeling a sudden craving for soju. "With all this meat and these organs, let's try making clam chowder," he mused. Clam chowder is a North American-style clam soup, delicate and smooth. "A masterpiece." He nodded approvingly. "For dinner, we'll have scallop sashimi with wine. And tomorrow morning, we'll cure the hangover with clam chowder." "Perfect." His eyes darkened with a mischievous gleam as he emphasized the last 8 words. "A nutritious meal for hunters." He pointed to a dark, brownish mass with his knife. "This is the poison sac." The poison sac contained an extremely dangerous toxin. Eating it would result in death. But if one survived, they would gain resistance to poison. Just looking at it, the effectiveness was evident. Watching him speak and laugh to himself, Nabi helplessly thought, "Master really is terrifying." He chuckled wickedly. "So those pathetic guys can eat it every day. I'll prepare it in a way that it can be preserved." Superstar Hanghyuk shivered involuntarily. The killing intent was palpable. He readied his elbow, a determined glint in his eye. "Let's get started, shall we?" Suddenly, the door creaked open. Min entered from outside. "Good morning, Master." The two greeted him with a smile. "Good morning." As Yu Sungwoo pulled up a chair, he remarked, "It's early, and you're already working. Seems interesting." Min happily replied, "Just preparing this clam." Min then asked, "Is this the clam that was found in the river? Is it edible?" Yu Sungwoo paused, turning to look at Min. He stood up quickly and asked, "A river? Hara gigas can be found in a river?" Min casually answered, "Of course." Yu Sungwoo set the knife down. His interest piqued. "That's interesting. Tell me more." Min began to explain. "About 2 days ago, we received a report from the locals about a loud noise coming from the drainage pipes. The hunters were called to the site. They discovered a very small tear in the fabric of space." Yu Sungwoo began to sense the gravity of the situation. If that's the case, he fell silent, deep in thought. If this continued, there was a possibility that a portal could open in that area soon. His face grew serious as he pondered the implications of this discovery. Nabi carefully carried the plate out at this moment. She cheerfully placed it on the table and reminded everyone, "Here's the scallop salad." Yu Woo glanced at Min O'Keefe, who was holding her chopsticks, and asked. Before the gate opened, there was another crack, like an ominous sign, near the drainage pipe, wasn't there? "That's right," she replied, tapping her chopsticks on the table and looking up. "Because the situation might change at any moment. A special response team has already been dispatched there." He let out a relieved sigh. "No wonder I haven't seen Baek Hanghyuk around lately." Min O'Keefe picked up some salad with her chopsticks and looked surprised. "Wow, the teacher's skills are amazing. He sliced it so thinly you can practically see through it." He turned around with a cheerful grin. "That's how it gets that perfect texture. Do you want vinegar or soy sauce with wasabi?" "I'll have soy sauce without wasabi," she replied. He quickly grabbed the bottle of soy sauce. Yu Woo's expression grew darker as he looked at the cracks. He recalled how Park Sun-hin had mentioned before that some people had defied the principles of time and space and returned to Earth in inexplicable ways. And then there was Nabi's discovery of scallops and the Hara gigas found in the river. Deep in Yu Woo's memory was the image of a large figure. The race that typically consumed these scallops was the Giantes, a proud and extremely violent species with strength surpassing level 90. The cracks were certainly related to them. His hands froze while holding the bottle of soy sauce. This was too strange to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Suspicious thoughts clouded his mind. What if this isn't just a coincidence? His entire body froze with unease, a sense of guilt creeping over him. In an underground sewer pipe, Baek Hanghyuk frowned in annoyance. "This is unbearable." The manager beside him, also looking displeased, snapped, "Then just quit already. Is it really impossible to change this situation?" The manager glared at him and added, "If you can't even write your resignation letter because you're lying in a sleeping bag whining like a bug, I can write it for you anytime. Got it?" She turned to him with a harsh look. "I've tried for a whole month to respect you, but this is just too much." Baek Hanghyuk choked up, crying in frustration. "This is too much. Why did I give up my day off to sit in a sewer like this? This doesn't feel like First Order at all. The manager sighed in exasperation. Then what do you think First Order should be doing? He perked up immediately at her words, his eyes lighting up, with a cheerful snap of his fingers. Baek Hang-hyuk declared, something grand, of course. Fighting monsters while live streaming. She turned away, distancing herself. You might as well quit this job and join a game show instead. His enthusiasm instantly deflated, and he stood there awkwardly. Defeated, he muttered, fine, forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. Like a sulking child, he trudged away, mumbling, whatever, I'm done. The manager turned back, her expression serious. In front of her was a gate with a blue crack running through it. Her eyes reflected her weariness. Baek Hang-hyuk wasn't entirely wrong. How much longer do we have to stay here waiting? She glanced at him as he pouted. Still, as members of the military, this is part of the job, guard duty. Even here, leaning down, she reminded him, hey, go upstairs and call the next team down for their shift. Suddenly, a tremor shook the ground. Startling her, the manager spun around, alarmed. The crack behind them had widened significantly. A critical situation was unfolding. Armed military forces quickly arrived on the scene. Baek Hang-hyuk crawled out of his sleeping bag, scowling as he grabbed his weapon. Damn it, she turned to assess the situation. Focusing on the gate's level, the monitor flashed red, then shattered amid the continuous vibrations. She froze, momentarily stunned. The monitor's broken. The manager collapsed to her knees. Overwhelmed, S-rank, or worse. Clutching her face, she trembled uncontrollably, stammering, I can't determine anything. As the gate expanded wider and wider before them, a sense of helplessness loomed. Are we, this city, just going to disappear without a trace? The soldiers stared anxiously at the growing threat. A gloved hand gently rested on her knee, offering reassurance. Baek Hang-hyuk strode forward confidently, exuding a commanding aura. Before it grows any larger, someone has to go inside. He repeated cheerfully. Emergency guidelines for crack incidents, G3 protocol. Both of their eyes lit up as they shouted in unison. Deploy the rift stabilizer to stop its expansion and hold on until reinforcements arrive. Baek Hang-hyuk's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Now we need to temporarily stop it. The manager stood up, blocking him and reminding him. The entire attack squad would be more effective. He waved her off dismissively. Min isn't here. Without Min, everyone would just get in my way. Placing both hands firmly on her shoulders, he looked at her, leaving her bewildered. His tone was firm. I'll take the stabilizer and go in to adjust the rift. But, his serious face was reflected in her wide, confused eyes. Listen carefully. Baek Hang-hyuk impatiently continued. At the outskirts near Changyunggung Road, there's a hunter's diner. Go there, explain the situation to the owner, and bring that person here as fast as you can. Though puzzled, she nodded. Understood. He patted her on the shoulder, considering his next words carefully. Mention my name and beg them to come help. If you want to survive, that's the only way. Seeing her hesitation, he shouted, hurry up, that's an order. The manager immediately stood at attention. Got it. As soon as she left, Baek Hang-hyuk rummaged through his bag. His trembling hands reached for a cigarette in his pocket. Just as he brought it near his lips, it fell to the ground. Damn it. A soldier approached him, looking impressed. Baek Hang-hyuk, you're pretty cool today. He grinned playfully. Are you guys recording this? The group hesitated awkwardly but didn't deny it. Well, yeah. Unamused, he leaned to light the cigarette and said, just focus on catching anything that comes out of there. I'm heading in. With that, he grabbed the stabilizer and plunged into the rift. I'm going. His small figure disappeared into the other side. The soldiers outside fired continuously, loading golden rounds into their weapons. Fire. Reinforce the nets. If we get pushed back, it's over. A red monster with ferocious eyes and its underlings surged out of the rift. Charging forward, the military fell into chaos. It won't stop. Reload. Reload. Suddenly, everything grew quiet. Baek Hang-hyuk looked up, seeing a massive black figure rushing toward him. The crimson beast towering over 10 meters locked its gaze on him. Its razor-sharp claws sliced through the air at incredible speed. Terrified, he shut his eyes, bracing himself. Mom. At that moment, a sword-wielding figure charged in from behind. It was Yu Wu, radiating fury, cutting down the beast in one clean stroke. As his booted foot touched the ground with a thud, he stood silently, Facing the hovering bats above, Yu Wu calmly sheathed his sword. Unfazed. Behind him, blood splattered violently, painting the walls. The soldiers stood in stunned silence, lowering their weapons in disbelief. Without a word, Yu Wu picked up his sword again, shielding himself from the blood splatter with an air of quiet composure. The corpses of the monsters lay scattered across the ground, completely defeated. The soldiers were baffled. What's happening here? Yu Wu stood before the faintly glowing gate. Then, with a swift gust of wind, he disappeared into it. The soldiers quickly shielded themselves from the powerful winds. Looking around at the silence, the group began to chatter. Was there someone here a moment ago? Confirm that the monsters have been eliminated. Check the recordings to ensure none escaped. Call the military medic. Meanwhile, Baek Hanghyuk crouched, trembling in terror as he peeked out from his hiding spot. Terrified, he clutched his head. The energy barrier's been completely activated. He felt like a grain of sand amidst towering pillars. Wailing internally, am I going to die here? The Gyantes glared at the barrier in front of them with rage. They exchanged frustrated glances. Why can't we go any further? No idea, just hit it harder. One of them raised its fist in fury, striking the barrier with immense force. The shield shattered, sending fragments flying everywhere. Baek Hanghyuk, hiding behind a pillar, peeked out in shock. They're breaking the energy barrier, with their bare hands? The other Gyantes followed suit, pounding relentlessly on the barrier in front of them. He crouched down, trembling and terrified. Hurry up, you damn regressor, get here already. One of the Gyantes slammed its fist into the barrier, sending a massive fragment hurtling toward Baek Hanghyuk's hiding spot. He looked up in panic, eyes wide with fear. What? Quickly, his small body dodged, narrowly avoiding the projectile. He screamed loudly in fright. The Gyantes stopped and turned their heads, drawn to the noise. What was that sound? Horrified, Baek Hanghyuk curled up tightly, covering his mouth to stifle his breathing, trying desperately not to make a sound. Baek Hanghyuk carefully lifted his gaze to observe. A Gyantes had spotted him. Its glowing red eyes locked onto him. Sweat poured down his face as he gave a terrified, forced smile. The Gyantes muttered among themselves while staring at him. Looks like this one set up the barrier. Crush him, that'll be more satisfying. Immediately, Baek Hanghyuk regained his composure and burst out angrily. Damn it. He pulled out his gun and quickly fired. You think he'll die that easily? The bullets flew like grains of sand, but they were effortlessly deflected. The Gyantes didn't even flinch, raising a massive leg to finish him off. Realizing his bullets had no effect and were even ricocheting back, Baek Hanghyuk froze in despair, bracing for the worst. Just then, Yu Wu appeared on the other side of the barrier, watching the scene unfold. Seeing him, Baek Hanghyuk exhaled deeply and slumped back. He's here. Yu Wu jumped down gracefully, sword in hand. His other hand gripped the hilt. Ready. Drawing the blade with a calm, satisfied expression, he strode forward. Behind him, a blinding light cast his figure into a hazy silhouette. The Gyantes shouted in shock. What is that? Move away. Yu Wu walked past them with ease, delivering casual but precise strikes. A faint whirlwind surrounded him as he moved. One by one, the Gyantes collapsed to the ground. Baek Hanghyuk watched the scene unfold, his small eyes wide with awe. He's not even a monster. Recalling the time he had foolishly punched Yu Wu, he shuddered. I actually hit that guy? Yu Wu glanced back at him with a neutral expression. Suddenly, a stone flew out of nowhere, hurtling toward Baek Hanghyuk. Completely caught off guard, he took the hit head on, a large lump forming on his head as he crumpled to the ground. Yu Wu approached him, crouching beside his dazed form. This guy was hiding the whole time. What was he even looking around for? Yu Wu sighed as he surveyed the scene. I wasn't even planning to kill the Gyantes. Before him lay the bodies of the fallen Gyantes scattered across the ground. Were they really planning to conquer the entire planet? He grabbed a bag and calmly started collecting resources and artifacts, muttering to himself, let's store these in the warehouse first. With a slight smirk, he hoisted Baek Hanghyuk over his shoulder. And this kid too. Approaching the barrier, Yu Wu unceremoniously tossed Baek Hanghyuk through it. If I threw him gently, the hunters would notice and just take him back anyway. His expression finally softened, and he puffed out his chest with relief. That's done and dusted. Meanwhile, at his diner, the air was pierced by a loud, pained cry from Nabi. Master, help me. The customers looked on cheerfully, amused by the scene. Your Aeropose is so adorable. Look this way. Look this way. Can I touch its front paw? Yu Wu entered the diner, surprised and confused by the commotion. Nabi reached out toward him, crying pitifully. Didn't I tell you? Can't you hear me? This is what happens when you leave me alone. Yu Wu stepped forward apologetically. Sorry, dear customers. This Aeropose is actually one of our staff members. At that moment, a woman approached in a flurry of concern. You're the owner of this diner, correct? Yes, that's me, he replied. She introduced herself politely. I'm Wang Jihyun, an assistant with First Order. Don't worry, I'm just here to ask for urgent help. Yu Wu hesitated for a moment, his thoughts uneasy. I just got back from the sewer. Though, it turned out that Baek Hanghyuk, through Wang Jihyun, was requesting Yu Wu's assistance. But Yu Wu, sensing something strange, suddenly bolted out of the diner without warning. He backed away, pushing a chair aside. Well then, looking at Wang Jihyun, who stood before him, teary-eyed and dejected, he sighed. All right, let's talk. 2 steaming cups of coffee were placed on the table. Yu Sungwoo sat down next to Wang Jihyun and asked. So, to sum it up, he gestured to the side. Baek Hanghyuk charged into the space rift and is now asking for my help. Huh? Wang Jihyun looked at him anxiously, pleading, this is an emergency. Only someone of S rank can go through the gate. Seeing her worried expression, Yu Sungwoo covered his mouth and chuckled softly. That's true. Wang Jihyun, confused by his reaction, stared at him with suspicion. He took a sip of his coffee and mused. Not bad. Baek Hanghyuk, I've got to say, I admire him. Still puzzled, Wang Jihyun tilted her head. Huh? Yu Sungwoo laughed out loud. It's nothing. Don't worry. There'll be good news soon. Just relax and breathe. He thought to himself. It seems like the branch office hasn't contacted her yet. He glanced toward the other side of the diner, where Nabi was surrounded by a group of customers poking and prodding the helpless cat. Mumbling to himself, he said, if we're talking about emergencies, that over there looks more urgent. A man with a stern face was stroking Nabi's tail, laughing gleefully. So cute. The tail is so round and soft. Nabi flailed its paws at him in frustration, hissing, meow. I said, don't touch my tail. Irritated by the scene, Yu Sungwoo frowned. Do they think this is a cat cafe? They're not even ordering food. What kind of customers are these? He walked over and pushed the group out of the diner. Get out. The group protested, annoyed. What's with this guy? How rude. Ignoring their complaints, he slammed the door shut and sighed deeply. Turning back to Wang Jihyun, he asked, so, you're a hunter? She nodded seriously. Yes, although I work in an office. I'm an awakened individual. He smirked mischievously. A hunter? Huh? That's great. Noticing his expression, Wang Jihyun felt a bit uneasy. What do you mean by that? She glanced at him as he petted Nabi gently. Take a rest, he said to the cat, then addressed her curiosity. At a diner, you should eat something, right? She waved her hand, declining. No, I can't sit down to eat given the current situation. He tied on an apron with a chuckle. But I've already said everything I needed to. Haven't I? Placing a hand on his chest, Yu Sungwoo felt a pang of frustration. Why haven't we had more hunters as customers lately? Despite offering meals with energy-boosting effects, it didn't seem to draw much interest. Looking at a delicious plate of steak, he muttered, the problem must be the flavor. It's not good enough to make a noticeable impact. Pondering, he thought, still, the recovery dishes we serve have some potential. They're perfect for attracting modern hunters. Exhausted and overworked, his face lit up with determination. First, we need a bait product. He slammed the table, startling Wang Jihyun. She flinched as he turned to her with a smile. You've been feeling cold symptoms lately, haven't you? Sometimes a chill runs down your spine, right? Surprised, Wang Jihyun stammered. How did you know? I've been pulling all-nighters and sleeping in sewers recently. So, Yu Sungwoo examined her like a curious animal in a zoo. It seems like you've caught a chill. Overthinking and overworking have made your neck and shoulders cold as well. Suspicion filled Wang Jihyun's mind. Can I ask, is this a diner? Or is it a pharmacy? Heading into the kitchen, Yu Sungwoo didn't forget to call back to her. I have a menu item for treating chills. Just wait a moment. Watching him with skepticism, she mumbled, selling medicine now. Huh? In the kitchen, he tapped on the shell of a giant clam. These are the ingredients I harvested earlier from those giant monsters. Outside the kitchen, Wang Jihyun nervously bit her nails. Why does he seem so unbothered after listening to me? If Baek Hang-hyuk asked for his help, he must be incredibly strong. She glanced at her phone. Still no contact from the branch office, which likely meant the spatial gate had already been handled by someone. Her gaze turned serious as she looked toward the kitchen. Seeing Yu Sung-woo busying himself with the giant clam, she thought, it must be him. Scratching her head nervously, she recalled the guidelines she had been given. Basic rules for dealing with regressors. Rule 1. Be as cautious as if you were handling a bomb. Treat them with the respect you'd show another human being. Yu Sung-woo turned toward her with a cheerful smile. So, have you made up your mind now? She nodded awkwardly, forcing a smile, but internally she was screaming. Eating and drinking must be part of the guidelines too, right? Yu Sung-woo began his cooking. He poured garlic into a pan. Next, he added olive oil, stirring it thoroughly. He then picked up a bowl of clam meat. It smells amazing, Wang Ji-hyun murmured. Are you cooking clam meat? He smiled and explained. Yes, this is clam meat soup, Harajiga's meat soup. She tilted her head, curious. But why is the clam meat so big? He chuckled. It's called Harajiga's. Have you seen one before? She blinked in surprise. I'm a city girl. I don't know much about seafood. Her eyes drifted toward the massive clam shell in the kitchen. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Wait, isn't that a clam monster? Slamming the table, she panicked. This crazy guy is feeding me monster meat? Noticing her reaction, he frowned in confusion. Is something wrong? Terrified, she quickly replied. No, nothing. I'm just not hungry anymore. Holding her head in despair, she thought, dealing with a regressor is like handling a bomb. If I refuse, her mind conjured a catastrophic image, the city exploding into ruins. Shaking her head, she waved her hands frantically. No, it's fine. Cooking clam soup. Step 1. Sauté garlic, potatoes, and bacon. Step 2. Add flour. Then stir in potatoes and clam meat. Pour in milk and broth. The milk, harvested from minotaurs, is lower in sugar but richer in vitamins and fats than ordinary milk. Step 3. After adding the milk, mix in a layer of magical essence, followed by various magical enhancements. Stir continuously to prevent burning. After finishing the cooking, Yu Sung-woo tasted his creation. He smiled. All right. A steaming bowl of soup was brought out, filled with clam meat, warm broth, and restorative energy. He smiled at Wang Ji-hyun. Take your time and enjoy. Still overwhelmed, she muttered. You finished so quickly. He crossed his arms and smiled. It only seems like that because it's made from a giant clam. It's actually just clam meat and milk porridge. Yu Sung-woo offered. Should I sprinkle some cilantro on top? Wang Ji-hyun immediately shook her head. No, thanks. Who knows if that's some kind of monster skin or something. She stared at the steaming bowl of porridge, deep in thought. Resolving herself, she closed her eyes and took a spoonful. Her cautious reaction made Yu Sung-woo raise an eyebrow in curiosity. As she swallowed the first spoonful, she marveled. So warm. She imagined herself stranded in an icy desert, freezing in the middle of a winter night. Then, out of nowhere, a house appeared, and she felt the warmth of a fireplace inside. She kept eating eagerly, sweat pouring down her face. Peeling off her jacket, she continued to eat, despite the heat making her wave her hands to cool herself. Watching her, Yu Sung-woo chuckled. Feeling hot? Fanning herself, she replied. Yeah, really hot. Smiling at him, Wang Ji-hyun admitted. This is my first time trying monster meat, but it's actually pretty good. At the Korean branch of the Hunter Association, in a meeting room, a hearing regarding an S-rank establishment was underway. A middle-aged man sat with his fingers interlocked, surrounded by walls adorned with photos of past generations. A secretary took notes on the proceedings while a young man stood upright. Looking directly at the middle-aged man, Baek Hang-hyuk spoke up with a displeased expression. I understand what you're trying to say. And I was about to say the same thing. The middle-aged man, Lee Jung-hun, the branch chief of the Korean Hunter Association, looked at him. Then, about this mysterious individual with an unclear background. Baek Hang-hyuk interrupted. Branch chief. It's not a mysterious individual with an unclear background. He's the owner of a hunter restaurant. Lee Jung-hun pressed on. And this restaurant owner, within just 5 minutes, managed to eliminate dozens of monsters presumed to be S-rank? Baek Hang-hyuk cut him off again. Branch chief, allow me to clarify, it's not just presumed to be S-rank but confirmed as S-rank or higher. Internally, he screamed. That detector exploded, didn't it? How many times do I have to explain this? Lee Jung-hun, his shiny bald head gleaming with irritation, scowled. This kid, are you mocking me? Adjusting his tie and sighing deeply, he continued, let me ask again. Regressor number 21, the owner of the Hero's Diner, eliminated dozens of S-rank monsters, is that true? Baek Hang-hyuk casually covered his mouth as he let out a long yawn. I already said I saw it with my own eyes. But if you're still doubtful, you can just credit me with capturing them instead. Lee Jung-hun rubbed his temples in frustration. Do you realize this isn't normal? Baek Hang-hyuk shrugged. No, I don't. The branch chief slammed the table in anger. All individuals with immeasurable power are supposed to be in the city center. Yet this happens here. Does that sound normal to you? Turning his face away, Baek Hang-hyuk feigned ignorance. Then, facing Lee Jung-hun with a sly grin, he said, but, branch chief, think about it. Isn't it possible there are still people with immeasurable power who haven't been discovered yet? He continued, when they first arrived on Earth, didn't they register as regressors? The branch chief hesitated. Yes, that's right. And if some people don't want to register with the association as regressors, isn't it normal that we wouldn't encounter them? Lee Jung-hun nodded, his suspicion growing. That does make sense. Baek Hang-hyuk smirked smugly. Exactly. So what's the problem if someone with that kind of power runs a restaurant? As long as they don't do anything wrong, it's fine, right? He slammed the table and flashed a cunning smile. So this regressor is just that kind of person, end of story. Lee Jung-hun raised an eyebrow. End of story? Rubbing his chin, Baek Hang-hyuk replied, no one needs to feel awkward about this. A decent person would never even consider hiding anything. Leaning on the table, Baek Hang-hyuk swayed back and forth casually. People like that aren't enemies of the country. Don't overthink it. Lee Jung-hun frowned in frustration. Not everything in this world can be divided into enemies and allies. He continued, let's assume we encounter a problem. I can't fully trust people like that just because they appear kind-hearted. This concerns the safety and lives of our citizens. Baek Hang-hyuk smirked. Who's saying otherwise? Anyway, those who are of higher rank than you, or at least on the same level, will make their own judgments. He waved his hand dismissively and turned to the secretary. Either way, this is a conclusion reached by the current key personnel. Since it's an important matter, underline it, please, Ms. Secretary. Lee Jung-hun wiped the sweat from his forehead, his frustration mounting. This damn brat. Don't think I'll let this go just because of your smooth talk. He grew more anxious, imagining the nation's destruction. Like those other countries, they got involved with the wrong regressor. We shouldn't provoke him, but if we don't handle this carefully, I can't let him blow this country to bits. Time passed before Lee Jung-hun finally spoke. There's no other choice. I'll report this matter to the higher-ups. Baek Hang-hyuk lazily picked at his ear. Sure, go ahead and report it. Can I leave now? I've got something urgent to take care of. Lee Jung-hun nodded. Something urgent? Go on. Then, you should be investigating, patrolling, and looking out for the citizens. Baek Hang-hyuk blew on his finger after cleaning his ear and glanced at him as if he were an idiot. Branch chief, you're not very sharp, are you? I need to go buy land. What? Lee Jung-hun asked, confused. Baek Hang-hyuk leaned in and whispered in his ear. The strongest regressor in history is running that restaurant. Right? If we live near him, even if Earth is destroyed, we'd still survive. Don't you think the land prices around there are going to skyrocket soon? Lee Jung-hun's face went blank as he forced a smile and began gathering his documents. Right, why didn't I think of that? Then, smacking Baek Hang-hyuk on the head with the stack of papers, he snapped, you really think I'd say that? The citizens are in danger. And you're talking about land? Clutching the lump on his head, Baek Hang-hyuk grumbled, we need to keep the citizens safe. But I have to secure my wallet first. Lee Jung-hun roared in exasperation. Shut your mouth, you're driving me insane. Outside the restaurant, a group of soldiers was chatting. He saved Hunter Baek Hang-hyuk. Doesn't that sound a bit odd? One of them turned to Min O'Keefe and asked, Captain, is this really a restaurant run by a regressor? It looks so ordinary. Min O'Keefe replied seriously, I've warned you several times already, don't do anything disrespectful here. The soldier who asked seemed annoyed. Hey, we're just regular folks, why would we ever do something rude? The others quickly chimed in. That's right, of course. Min O'Keefe opened the door and invited everyone inside. Yu Sung-woo stood behind the counter, smiling warmly at them. Welcome, please come in. Two of them exchanged glances. I brought them here, sir, one said. Well done, Yu Sung-woo replied. Min O'Keefe cleared his throat awkwardly. Thanks to you. I feel much better. Thank you. Yu Sung-woo laughed heartily. Oh, thank you. No need to be so formal. Everyone seated themselves at the tables. And Min O'Keefe spoke up again. We can't do much to help you, sir, so at the very least, we thought we'd help boost your restaurant's sales. The others exchanged skeptical looks, whispering among themselves. I thought he'd look really unusual. Why does he seem so warm and approachable? Yeah, I thought he'd be cold and intimidating, like an assassin or something. But looking closer, he's just a regular restaurant owner. Well, maybe not just a regular owner, he's kind of handsome. Kind of. No, he's definitely handsome. All eyes turned toward Yu Sung-woo, who was fully focused on cooking. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in surprise. Wait, is that an enro pose over there? Excitement lit up the room as they spotted Nabi. By then, Yu Sung-woo had finished cooking and was drying his freshly washed hands. Nabi was busily serving dishes to the tables. The steaming dishes were set down, and everyone eagerly dug in. Smiling, they said, "Thank you, we'll enjoy the meal." The moment they took their first bite, everyone froze in shock. One soldier's eyes lit up. Delicious. It's so good. Another was moved to tears, shoveling spoonful after spoonful into his mouth. Someone turned to Min O'Keefe, his voice trembling. Captain, if we eat food this good every day, we could wipe out all the monsters out there. Seeing their exaggerated enthusiasm, Min O'Keefe looked skeptical. Really? The soldier wiped his tears. Overwhelmed. This isn't just food, it's a masterpiece. There's no other word for it. Min O'Keefe sighed, his expression unreadable as he observed the others' reactions. After some time, everyone had finished their meals. Watching them, Yu Sung-woo smiled to himself, thinking, great, 5 new advertising agents acquired. He imagined the soldiers returning to their base and spreading the word about his restaurant. Soon, droves of people would come flocking in, drawn by the buzz. A mischievous grin spread across his face. But first, I need to slowly get rid of their hesitation about eating monster ingredients. He smirked darkly to himself. If they ever realize what they're eating, I'll just make sure their bodies can't resist craving food like this. Suddenly, a loud scream erupted from outside the restaurant. In the heart of the city, under the blazing sun, Yu Sung-woo strolled through the bustling streets. He tilted his head back to look at the sky. It was cold just a while ago. Why is it so hot now? He noticed the curious stares from passers-by. I know, I'm feeling hot too. Glancing at his phone, he muttered, so this is why people check the weather forecast. He turned toward a nearby shop, an old-fashioned ice cream parlor. Peering into the display case, he picked out an ice cream bar and unwrapped it. Taking a bite, he mused, 40 years ago, no. Wait, 9 years ago, the seasons were still so distinct. Now the weather changes drastically in less than a month. Looking at the ice cream in his hand, he noted, pretty solid. Scanning his surroundings, he thought, the shop's closed, what should I do today? In front of a movie theater. He stroked his chin in excitement. Let's watch a movie. He looked at the ticket in his hand, grinning. Lucky, it starts in 10 minutes. His attention was drawn to a noisy commotion nearby. Curious, he turned to see what was going on. Across the street, a flea market was in full swing, with vendors loudly hawking their wares. Discounts here, get your bargains, trade your weapons here. Feeling intrigued, Yu Sung-woo wandered toward the flea market. A flea market, huh? Suddenly, he spotted something surprising. Nabi? There was the cat, sitting beside a little girl with green hair. He smiled, already making friends. Huh? Looks like a young girl. Glancing at his phone, he muttered, oh no, it's time. I'll have to ask about it after the movie. Whistling cheerfully, he walked into the theater. Meanwhile, in the flea market, a cute little girl was happily wandering around. Her eyes sparkled as she looked around, captivated by the bustling stalls. Then, her gaze landed on something that made her eyes light up even more, Nabi. The cat was staring curiously at a grilled meat stall. Meowing. What's this? Nabi wondered aloud. The green-haired girl exclaimed with delight. A chubby cat. She watched Nabi sitting there, utterly smitten. So cute. I really want to be friends with this kitty. Putting her hand to her head, she pondered deeply. What should I do? If it were mom. She remembered her mother's advice. Unha, making friends isn't scary. Just do something nice for them, and you'll be friends in no time. Her hair swayed as she perked up with determination. Exactly. Excited, she skipped over to the grilled meat stall. Pointing to a skewer, she said, "One chicken skewer, please." With the skewer in hand, she approached Nabi. "Kitty, do you want to eat this?" Nabi looked at her suspiciously. "I don't take food from strangers." Eunha gazed at the cat with childlike innocence. "Then let's be friends." "Kitty, be friends?" Nabi asked, tilting its head. "Don't you want to?" she asked back. Nabi hopped up and down with joy. "I have an earth friend now. Yay, meow." Eunha smiled brightly, handing over the chicken skewer. Eunha has a kitty friend. Eunha is happy too. Taking the skewer, Nabi tasted it cautiously. The moment it bit into the chicken, it leapt into the air with excitement. "So delicious. Meow." Seeing Nabi's reaction, Eunha giggled happily. Nabi's eyes sparkled as it examined the skewer. "I wonder what kind of support effect this chicken skewer has." "Support effect?" Eunha asked curiously. Nabi froze in shock. "It doesn't have any effects?" Eunha scratched her cheek awkwardly. Does tasting delicious count as an effect?" Nabi sighed in disappointment. "How can this even be called cooking? If I eat this," it imagined itself turning into a plump, round cat. "I'll become a fat cat." Eunha tilted her head. "But if you eat a little, you won't get fat, right?" Pushing the skewer away dramatically, Nabi declared. "No, I can't." Eunha was surprised by the cat's strong reaction. "Alright, then." She gently shook Nabi. "Mom always says that self-control and focus are the most important things." Nabi looked at her in confusion. "Meow?" Eunha held Nabi's paw. "If you eat too much of anything, it's bad for your body. But if you eat moderately, it's fine. Besides, people say experience is important, and you have to eat lots of delicious food to do well in school." The little girl spoke earnestly. "You'll grow taller, and your physical abilities will improve too." Nabi listened seriously, startled. "Delicious food can have such effects?" Eunha continued, swaying happily. "Also, being a picky eater is really bad for you." Nabi was utterly shocked. "Picky eater?" The cat stared tensely at the skewer in its paw, its body trembling slightly. Then, resolving itself, it continued eating. "It's so delicious." Eunha cheerfully grabbed Nabi's paw. "Kitty, let's go to the next food stall." Nabi smiled, eyes narrowing with excitement. "Let's go right now." Somewhere, in a building owned by the ISAC Corporation, Baek Hanghyuk fumed, his head practically on fire. That bald branch chief. Min O'Keefe glared at him. "If someone hears you, that's going to cause trouble." "Shut up. I am being quiet." Baek Hanghyuk hissed back, smoke practically coming out of his ears. Suddenly, he shouted, "What? The Supreme Commander is coming for an on-site inspection?" Clutching his head in frustration, he groaned. "We're still recovering from the damage in Area A and now we have to check on the drainage pipes with the cracks exposed." Min O'Keefe sighed as well. Whenever a high-ranking official visits, even the military feels the strain. Baek Hanghyuk continued, visibly steaming. "Wait, are you telling me the Supreme Commander of the World Hunter Association from ISAC is really coming here?" "Yes," Min O'Keefe replied with another sigh. "That's why everything has already been prepared." Baek Hanghyuk stomped his foot in anger. "A bunch of idiots. If I hadn't been stuck in that drainage pipe, I wouldn't be in this mess." He turned to Min O'Keefe. "Hey, Min, let me handle the search and destruction missions. That's more up my alley." Min O'Keefe nodded. "Fine, I'll take care of the investigation. You're better suited for scouting terrain and handling unexpected situations anyway." Baek Hanghyuk gazed tearfully at the city in the distance. "Other people go on dates or watch movies on their days off. But I have to patrol." With that, he activated his stealth technique and disappeared. Min O'Keefe exhaled and readied himself. "Alright, let's get to work." Deep underground, a group of men in suits pointed their guns at Min O'Keefe. He remained unfazed, casually reaching into his pocket. A sudden sound echoed through the air, followed by the clatter of guns hitting the ground and cries of pain. The men in suits all collapsed. Defeated, Min O'Keefe muttered in annoyance. "These pests, I keep fighting them, but they never end." Special forces soon arrived, handcuffing the defeated men. Looking down at them with disdain, Min O'Keefe sneered, "You blind, money-hungry criminals. Do you have any idea how many people had to sacrifice themselves to uphold the cultural standards we have now?" He kicked one of them aside. "That should be all for this area. How many have we caught so far?" A soldier reported. 13, sir." Min O'Keefe nodded, giving instructions to the team. "Maintain the formation and keep moving forward." Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Korean Hunter Association, Lee Jung-hun paced back and forth nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Why do I have such a bad feeling about this? He muttered, picking up a glass of water to drink. As he sipped, the door burst open, and his secretary rushed in, shouting, "Branch Chief, there's a power outage." Lee Jung-hun choked on his water, sputtering as he turned to the secretary. "A power outage? How is that possible? I assigned people to handle this." The secretary, equally flustered, explained, "During the raid on the criminal organization, Min O'Keefe's team accidentally shot the power facility, causing it to break down." Lee Jung-hun wiped the water off his face and groaned. "If things keep going like this, we'll lose power 365 days a year." The secretary looked just as anxious. How could this even happen? Back at Min O'Keefe's location, a blond man was screaming in euphoria, gripping an electrical outlet. Electricity surged through him as he shouted, "Power! My power is overflowing." Min O'Keefe reported to Lee Jung-hun over the phone. "Turns out, we've got an electrokinetic here. He's absorbing electricity to enhance his strength." Lee Jung-hun's voice rose with anger. "What, are you serious?" Min O'Keefe continued. "Yeah, but it looks like he's about to pass out from the voltage overload." Moments later, the blond man collapsed to the ground, smoke curling from his mouth. "He's done for," Min O'Keefe said flatly. Meanwhile, at the movie theater, Yoo Sung-woo was happily munching on popcorn while watching a film. On screen, a woman cried bitterly, saying, "Do you know, I've waited for you for over 200 years. A man grabbed the woman's hand. "I've been searching for you for 200 years as well, just to say this." He raised a knife toward her. "I'll kill you. You're the enemy of my parents." Yoo Sung-woo, shocked by the sudden twist, dropped his popcorn. "What the hell is this?" Suddenly, click, the screen went black. He stared at the blank screen, his mind filled with questions. A theater staff member appeared and bowed apologetically. "We're sorry, everyone. Due to a power outage, we're unable to continue the movie." As people began leaving their seats, Yoo Sung-woo remained frozen in shock, walking out of the theater like a ghost. He thought, in over 40 years of watching movies, something like this has never happened to me. And it had to happen during the sequel to a film I saw ages ago. This is absurd. Despairing, he cried out, "Oh, gods above, up in the heavens." Gaia scratched her ear in irritation. "Good grief, who's yelling now? So annoying." Yoo Sung-woo sighed deeply. Praying to the gods for a bit shouldn't be a problem, right? Back at his restaurant, he immediately checked the fridge. Seeing that everything was still fine, he exhaled in relief. Running a hand through his hair, he muttered, "Good thing we're outside the blackout area. If the ingredients had gone bad, it would have been a disaster." Calming himself, he mused, "It's just minor inconveniences, but when too many pile up, they can really stress us out." Smiling to himself, he looked around for something to do. In moments like these, the best way to distress is to eat something delicious. He pulled out a penguin-shaped ice shaver. Grinning, the penguin-shaped bingsu machine. "I missed this thing." Setting it on the table, he remarked, "The weather's cooling down nicely. Let's make some bingsu." Bingsu, a beloved Korean dessert, is often made with red beans, topped with jellies, grains, and other toppings over a bed of shaved ice. However, Yoo Sung-woo's eyes turned melancholic. "What I really miss," he murmured, "is the alcohol bingsu my late grandfather used to enjoy." To himself, he muttered, "I promised myself that when I grew up, I'd taste it someday." Smiling at the ice shaver, Yoo Sung-woo muttered, "I'm an adult now, aren't I?" Rolling his shoulders to warm up, he said, "All right, let's give this a try." He added sugar and used magic to condense milk into a thick cream. Then poured it into the penguin-shaped ice shaver. After that, he drizzled a bit of condensed milk over the shaved ice. Cutting up some fruit, he looked at the colorful pieces on the table and smiled. "These are the fruits Min gave me, aren't they?" Seeing him call me teacher and follow me around, chuckling at the memory, he resumed preparing the dish, placing the fruit neatly on top of the bingsu. Finally, he reached the most important ingredient, alcohol. Searching through his personal storage, he mused, "I should have a few bottles from the kingdom, right?" After a moment, he found a bottle labeled First Generation Heroes Reserve, a wine used to celebrate the defeat of the Demon King. Admiring it, he remarked, "Aged for 500 years, this must be top-tier stuff." Pouring a bit of the wine over the bingsu, he took a small spoonful to taste. The flavor hit him immediately, the fiery spice of the wine perfectly balanced by the coolness of the shaved ice. The sensation was a mix of freezing cold and melting warmth, both distinct and harmoniously blended. A soft smile spread across his face. So this is the taste. Reflecting on it, he thought, the hot burn of the wine melts away stress, while the cool ice refreshes the spirit. Now I understand why Grandpa loved this so much. He sighed with satisfaction. I get it now. That means I'm an adult, doesn't it? The front door suddenly opened, and Nabi's voice called out, I'm back. Unha followed behind him, bowing politely. Excuse me. Her manners were impeccable as she greeted him. Hello, sir. The power's out, so could I rest here for a while? Yu Sungwoo smiled warmly. Of course, go ahead and rest. He couldn't help but be impressed. What a polite child. Thinking about the situation, he mused, even though it's my day off. This is a guest Nabi brought over. Looking at them, he asked, do you two want something to eat? The little girl and the cat exchanged glances, then turned their eyes toward the penguin-shaped ice shaver. Catching their silent wish, Yu Sungwoo laughed. All right, let's make some bingsu. This time, he skipped the alcohol. After all, they're still kids, he thought with a smile. Next morning, Baek Hanghyuk and Min O'Keefe walked into the restaurant looking completely drained. Seeing their state, Yu Sungwoo raised an eyebrow in curiosity but maintained his polite smile. Good morning. Min O'Keefe stomped inside angrily. If the branch chief finds out. Baek Hanghyuk, silent and exhausted, flopped onto the table. Then forget it all. Yu Sungwoo watched the two with a mix of amusement and exasperation. These two are something else. After listening to their story, he stroked his chin thoughtfully. So, after hearing about the high-ranking official's visit, you two went and dismantled almost every criminal organization? Baek Hanghyuk and Min O'Keefe immediately started bickering. You just sat there benefiting from the cleanup without doing anything. Oh, really? And catching those weak organizations underground was such hard work. Huh? Yu Sungwoo chuckled at their antics but sympathized. Well, if you're in the military, and a division commander's coming, you have to clean everything up. And when they don't even show up. Yeah, that's frustrating. In unison, Baek Hanghyuk and Min O'Keefe nodded. Exactly. It's ridiculous. There are more important things to do. Clenching his fist, Baek Hanghyuk's eyes glistened with tears. So please, just give me something good to eat today. And no more of that flaming steak nonsense from this guy. Yu Sungwoo sighed with a small smile. After all that complaining, this is just about eating to calm down. Huh? Turning toward the kitchen, he added reassuringly. Alright, I'll cook something delicious for you today. Hearing that, Baek Hanghyuk cheered happily. Meanwhile, at the Spatial Rift Management Department, a polar bear beastman wearing glasses was reading documents. This was Puro, a beastman who had fallen to earth after being caught in a rift. Wang Jihyun placed a stack of papers on the table, startling Puro, who looked up. She introduced herself. I've been assigned to temporarily assist with rift management work. Puro gave a gentle smile. Thank you. Suddenly, his stomach growled. Blushing slightly, Puro explained, Earth food doesn't agree with me. Wang Jihyun nodded in understanding. I see, so it's not just because of the heavy workload? Puro shook his head. Even if the work is difficult, it's meaningful. It's no big deal. Wang Jihyun looked at him thoughtfully. I like how honest you are. If only our Baek Hanghyuk could be half as straightforward as you. Puro chuckled softly. I think Mr. Baek Hanghyuk is working very hard. Wang Jihyun teased. If he hears you say that, it'll be terrifying. Don't praise him too much. Puro balanced a pen on his nose and replied casually. Anyway, it's not because the work is hard. Wang Jihyun pondered for a moment. Could it be because Earth food doesn't agree with you? Or is it because you find cooked food harder to eat and prefer raw food? Puro answered seriously. I've tried eating raw food too, but it still doesn't suit me. Wang Jihyun nodded thoughtfully. I see. Food from your homeland really is irreplaceable. Puro's ears drooped, and he looked sad. A homeland, but I don't even know its name. Wang Jihyun patted his shoulder comfortingly. You're homesick, aren't you? Puro sighed. I suppose so. She tried to cheer him up as he wiped his nose. You've been working here for 3 years now. So you're a veteran. You're doing great. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Oh, wait. Handing him a piece of paper, she said, if it's this person, they might know. Puro blinked in confusion. Who? In the neighborhood, the sound of children laughing echoed through the streets. Puro, let us swing on your head. Please. Puro replied gently. All right, you can climb up, but be careful. If you fall, you'll get hurt. The children gleefully played with the big polar bear. When Puro spotted a restaurant, he gently set the children down. That's it for today, kids. I have work to do now. The children pouted but waved goodbye. Puro ruffled their hair. I'll come back to play tomorrow. The children brightened up. Really? Smiling, Puro waved as they left. Go carefully. Now, adjusting his glasses, he looked at the sign ahead. It must be here. His gaze fell on the restaurant's name, Hunter's Diner. As he approached, the door opened, and Yu Sungwoo stepped out to greet him. Ah, Mr. Puro, I got the message. Puro was about to step inside, but Yu Sungwoo stopped him. Sorry, this might sound a bit rude. Puro blinked, startled. Huh? Scratching his head awkwardly, Yu Sungwoo explained, you can't come inside. Puro's eyes welled up with tears. Why? Panicking, Yu Sungwoo quickly clarified. It's not that, it's just because of your fur. Understanding, Puro chuckled awkwardly. Oh, I see, I misunderstood. He sat outside the restaurant, curiously observing the surroundings. People passing by stared at him with delight. So cute. I wonder if he likes Sting, the energy drink. The people nearby began debating. You're dumb, it's probably salmon. Not Sting. Why would a polar bear drink Sting? But he's a polar bear. He's got to like Sting. Puro felt a bit awkward but still waved politely. In his head, he thought, I don't like sugary or fizzy drinks. People keep offering me those. And I'm sick of it. But I do like salmon. The crowd, utterly charmed by his cuteness, sighed in unison. Adorable. Yu Sungwoo turned to Puro. I heard from Ms. Ji-hyun that you've been feeling homesick. Is that true? Startled, Puro nodded. Yes, that's right. Holding a cup of coffee. He sighed sadly. Lately, I've been crying all the time and feeling down. Yu Sungwoo sighed as well. Classic signs of homesickness. Not much anyone can do about it. Scratching his head, he muttered to himself. Why does everyone assume I can cure homesickness? What am I, some sort of all-purpose therapist? Sitting beside Puro, he said reassuringly. Alright, the usual way to treat this is through food. I'll try cooking something for you. Though I don't think Earth's ingredients are very diverse. Puro only looked more disheartened, while Yu Sungwoo racked his brain for ideas. He said thoughtfully, in the world I used to live in, there were beastmen who were bears. But they weren't the same species as you. Puro. He recalled an image of a scarred polar bear with red eyes, roaring ferociously. Uric beastmen, he remembered. They were warriors summoned to Terra from this world. Extremely violent, destructive, and aggressive, nothing like you. Shaking his head to dispel the thought, he added, there's no way this gentle and knowledgeable bear could be an Uric. Standing up, he said, let's start with some food. And we'll talk afterward. Inside the restaurant, Nabi began pushing ingredients out. Phoenix feathers, 1,000-year-old ginseng leaves, and wyvern wings. Yu Sungwoo thought to himself, this should be enough. 3 hours later, he sat on the ground, clutching his head in despair. The 3-hour cooking session had failed to spark even a hint of interest in Puro. Now, Yu Sungwoo, Nabi, and Puro were all sitting on the floor, equally disappointed. Yu Sungwoo, Nabi, and Puro sat outside the restaurant, reflecting on the reasons for their failure. Yu Sungwoo rubbed his temples, visibly frustrated. I made so many dishes. Yet you didn't react to any of them. Why? Puro scratched his head awkwardly. I'm sorry. Yu Sungwoo waved it off. No need to apologize. I'm just confused. That's all. He glanced at the towering pile of dishes stacked beside Puro. At least one of these should have gotten some kind of reaction. Right? Puro looked down sadly and began to share. The place I lived in was just a small countryside town. He raised his head toward the sky, gazing at the moon, lost in thought. After a while, he stood up and said goodbye. It's late. I've troubled you enough for one day. Yu Sungwoo stood as well and replied politely. Not at all. If anything, I feel bad for not being able to help you. Nabi sprang to his feet, stretching. Alright, time for some exercise. Standing in the courtyard, Nabi let out a loud meow. Meow. He began throwing a flurry of punches into the air. Puro blinked in surprise. What's that cat doing? Yu Sungwoo chuckled and explained. He's burning off energy. Nabi's part of the Iolorus warrior lineage. Puro's eyes widened in shock. A warrior? But he's so small and cute. Yu Sungwoo laughed. I know, right? Puro watched Nabi train with great interest. Seeing the cat jump, punch, and kick with vigor, he remarked, he looks so happy doing this. Yu Sungwoo smiled and suggested, Sometimes your body needs a bit of a workout too. Why not join him for a run? Puro hesitated, embarrassed. I'm not sure. I've mostly been working and reading books. I don't think I can keep up with him. This caught Yu Sungwoo off guard. He put down the stack of dishes he was holding and turned to Puro. Wait a second, you've spent the past 3 years just working and reading? No exercise at all? Puro smiled sheepishly. Yes, that's right. Is that a problem? Yu Sungwoo was utterly shocked. Of course it is. Puro, you're a beastman, he continued. Even if beastmen behave like humans, you can't forget that half of you is still an animal. Ignoring your natural instincts can make you sick. Puro's ears perked up in alarm. Sick? Sick how? Pointing at Puro, Yu Sungwoo declared. Weakness. For starters, that belly of yours sticking out? That's the proof. A little while later, Puro was panting heavily, his tongue lolling out. My gallbladder's about to fall out, he gasped. Yu Sungwoo glanced at the clock, his face expressionless. It hasn't even been 30 minutes. Puro lay sprawled out in the middle of the courtyard, panting heavily. He gasped. Hey, does this really work? Shaking his head, Yu Sungwoo replied. It works for humans, but since you're a beastman, a little exercise like this won't have much effect. Puro shot him a resentful look, muttering silently. Then why did you even make me do this? Suddenly, Nabi jumped onto Puro's chest, pressing down with his paws. Nabi commanded, don't move. Puro, flustered, covered his blushing bare face. Hey, this is embarrassing. Nabi continued, your belly's all soft because you don't exercise. You got a bit of a pudge now, haven't you? Unable to look at Nabi, Puro stammered. Okay, enough already. Yu Sungwoo approached and explained. This is a traditional Iloris massage technique. It helps relieve muscle fatigue and soreness. After exercising, it can even double the fat burning effect. Puro was stunned. It's that effective? Sighing, Yu Sungwoo remarked. You really don't have a shred of wild instinct in you, do you? He turned toward the food tray and began preparing a meal. It seems like only that dish will have any effect on you. He thought back to a legendary children's dish called Frasberg, passed down by the Terra gladiator clan to the Frasberg family. Unlike knights, gladiators viewed victory in combat as the highest honor. In gladiator families, if a child wasn't interested in fighting, it was considered a disgrace. To address this, the Frasberg family developed a special dish for children. It was designed to enhance energy and ignite a competitive spirit. As an educator, Yu Sungwoo reflected, this method isn't exactly ideal, but learning about it wasn't a waste either. Stretching his arms, he smiled and said, let's give it a shot. He placed a slab of wild beef on the cutting board. The main ingredient, fit trident wild beef, thigh cut. Picking up a knife, he explained, the most important part of making this dish is ensuring it's palatable for children. It has to be simple and easy to eat. Lifting the knife, he began chopping rapidly. His hands moved swiftly, pounding the meat into fine mince. Before long, a perfectly minced pile of beef was ready. Yu Sungwoo sprinkled spices over it and carefully shaped the meat. Up to this point, it's just food. It's no longer the Frasberg family's secret recipe, he muttered, finishing the preparation. Finally, he infused the dish with magic, casting Lateris over the plate. The magic cast over the dish was from the element of ice dragons. The core of the spell was freezing, allowing the attributes of the magic to achieve maximum effect. Holding the plate of meat in his hands, Yu Sungwoo smiled. Perfect. Meanwhile, Puro was napping in the courtyard, drooling profusely. Yu Sungwoo called out, Puro, wake up and try this dish. Startled, Puro wiped his drool and sat up. Huh? Yu Sungwoo continued, pour whichever sauce you like on it and dig in. Excited, Puro exclaimed, it looks delicious, thank you. Without hesitation, he dumped the entire plate of meat into his mouth. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and his body began to tremble. Seeing this, Yu Sungwoo smirked and said to Nabi, get ready, this is going to be fun. Puro's demeanor shifted instantly, his eyes glowed blood red, and his body radiated an aura of fury. Beating his chest, he let out a thunderous roar. Roar! Yu Sungwoo planted a scarecrow in the ground and called out, good, Puro, over here. Snarling, Puro charged at the scarecrow, ripping it apart. Roar! Clapping his hands, Yu Sungwoo praised him. Excellent, just like that, keep going. Turning to Nabi, he instructed, get more scarecrows ready. Nabi, holding a bundle of scarecrows, cheerfully replied, got it, meow. Puro turned his sights on Nabi, and moments later, scarecrows were flying in shreds all around the courtyard. The next morning, in the restaurant, Wang Jihyun recounted with an exasperated expression. Puro called in sick today. Yu Sungwoo smiled nonchalantly. He's from the Uruk tribe, he'll be fine. He just needs a bit of rest and will recover soon. Curious, Wang Jihyun asked. Uruk tribe? He explained. They're a renowned lineage of warriors. Nodding in thanks, Wang Jihyun said, "Thank you for helping him. Puro's just sore now, but he's been sleeping peacefully. I don't know how to repay you." Yu Sungwoo laughed. "No need. Puro should be the one to repay me." Wang Jihyun shook her head. "No, I'm his superior. If a subordinate owes someone, it's the superior's responsibility to pay the debt." With a mischievous grin, Yu Sungwoo said, "Oh, is that so?" As he opened the refrigerator, he added, "All right, then you can repay me." Startled, Wang Jihyun asked, "What are you doing, Mr. Owner? Why are you opening the fridge?" He pulled out a plate of meat that radiated an ominous aura and smiled brightly. "Don't worry, it's just food. At worst, it won't taste great, but it can't be any worse than that." Wang Jihyun panicked. "You're not going to feed me what you gave him, are you?" She slammed the table and stood up in protest. "Wait, I'll repay you some other way." Looking at her with an innocent smile, Yu Sungwoo said, "Too late, I've already started cooking." Hunter's Diner. Yu Sungwoo was slicing a radish when snap, the knife broke. Holding the broken half of the knife in his hand, he muttered, "This." Hearing the noise, Nabi entered the kitchen. "What happened?" Yu Sungwoo sighed. "It's nothing, I just couldn't control my strength." He rummaged through the supply cabinet, muttering, "It's just a regular knife. So it couldn't handle it. Let's see, what's in storage?" Looking through his inventory, he saw a collection of weapons but no cooking knives. He muttered, "I can't exactly use a holy sword or a cursed sword for cooking. Can I?" Nabi climbed onto his shoulder. Curious, "Oh, would that be rude?" Yu Sungwoo pondered for a moment before snapping his fingers. "All right, today we're going knife shopping." On the way, he chatted with Nabi. Knives sold at supermarkets or markets are limited in quality. Let's check out a blacksmith. Nabi looked surprised. "There are blacksmiths here?" "Of course," Yu Sungwoo replied, "but they're called workshops here. Like that one over there." He pointed at someone walking by with a suitcase. They arrived in front of a building with the sign Crystal Valley. Looking up at it, Yu Sungwoo analyzed. "This seems like the place." Entering the building, he held up an invitation card and said to Nabi, "This is an invite from the city hall." Inside the Crystal Valley workshop, a staff member greeted them with a warm smile. Yu Sungwoo handed her the invitation. "Hello, I'm Yu Sungwoo." The staff member bowed politely and introduced herself. "I'm Seo Na-rae, your guide." Explaining his reason for visiting, he said, "Nice to meet you, Na-rae. I'm here to buy a knife." Na-rae maintained her professional smile. "A sword, you mean? Are you looking for twin swords or a longsword?" Yu Sungwoo shook his head and gestured with his hands. "No, I'm looking for a cooking knife. About this size." Na-rae froze momentarily. "A cooking knife?" Though she kept her polite smile. Inside, she was screaming, "What's wrong with this guy? Does he even know where he is?" Still, she composed herself and explained, "Unfortunately, we don't have any cooking knives in stock. If what you need isn't among the swords on display, you'll have to place a custom order." Glancing at Nabi, Yu Sungwoo nodded. "All right, we'll place a custom order." Then, Na-rae bit her lip. 100 million won, and he just casually decides to place an order like that? This guy really has no clue. She picked up a scheduling device and asked, "All right, do you have a preference for the artisan who will fulfill your custom order?" Yu Sungwoo smiled. "I don't know anyone here. Are there any artisans who are dwarves or elves?" Na-rae replied, "We do have an elven artisan." Without hesitation, he said, "Then I'll go with that one." Smiling cheerfully, Na-rae said, "Understood. Please follow me to the elevator." The three of them entered the elevator, and Na-rae pressed the button for basement level 25. Nabi pouted. "An elven artisan? I don't like them." Surprised, Yu Sungwoo asked, "Don't like them? Why not?" Looking unhappy, Nabi explained, "Elven weapons hate me." Yu Sungwoo tried to console him. "Well, that can't be helped. Dwarven artisans are too selective about their clients. And elven artisans make weapons that choose their users." When they arrived, Na-rae bowed politely. "We've reached your destination. I'll take my leave now." Yu Sungwoo nodded with a polite smile. Nabi, waving energetically, said, "Bye-bye." The atmosphere turned icy as Nabi shivered. It's freezing. Unbothered, Yu Sung-woo walked ahead, explaining, elves forge with cold energy, not heat. At the end of the corridor, a figure appeared, a blacksmith. Yu Sung-woo paused, slightly surprised. A female elf? He thought to himself. Due to the strength and power required in forging, elven blacksmith families usually pass the craft to sons. The blacksmith noticed him and said, "Oh?" Smiling, Yu Sung-woo greeted her, though his mind continued to analyze. Her talent must be exceptional. Stretching, the elf apologized. "Sorry, I was so focused on my work that I didn't notice you." With a cheerful tone, Yu Sung-woo replied, "It's all right, I came unannounced, so that's on me." The elf planted her hammer firmly on the ground, leaned on it, and introduced herself. "I'm Alistair." Yu Sung-woo smiled politely. "I'm Yu Sung-woo, but isn't Alistair a male name?" She explained, "It's the name passed down in my family." Yu Sung-woo's surprise was evident. So she's the head of her family? He thought to himself. She might be far more important than I initially assumed. Alistair stretched her arms, her attitude full of pride. "Before I accept your order, I want to make a few things clear." She spoke seriously. "First, I'm not picky about your qualifications, but the babies I create are." Continuing, she said, "Second, if my baby doesn't choose you, I won't give it to you. And I definitely won't refund your money." Yu Sung-woo nodded, showing he understood her terms. Alistair laid out her final condition. "Third, I've been in Korea for 2 years. And so far, none of my creations have chosen anyone." Nabi anxiously stomped his feet. "If I'm not chosen, what's the point?" Alistair laughed at the cat. "Just like your little cat friend said, it's pointless. So think carefully before you place an order." Yu Sung-woo smiled calmly and agreed. "All right." Seeing his attitude, Alistair relaxed. "Fine. Then, what do you want to make?" He explained his request. "A cooking knife for me. About the size of a standard medium chef's knife." Alistair raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Not a weapon? All right, it'll take about an hour, and it'll cost this much." She handed him the bill. And Yu Sung-woo smiled, nodding. "That's fine." Nabi, however, was startled. "That's a lot of zeros." Alistair picked up her hammer and got to work. She gave a sly grin, nudging Yu Sung-woo with her elbow. "If you have time, you can watch me and my baby in action." Feeling uneasy, Yu Sung-woo politely declined. "No, I'd better not. It'll cause a lot of chaos." Alistair burst into laughter, tears streaming down her face. She pointed at him. "Chaos? Why? You planning to steal something?" Yu Sung-woo looked at her with a blank expression. "Enough already." Still chuckling mischievously, Alistair dragged him along. Yu Sung-woo sighed helplessly. "Why are blacksmiths always so weird?" Nabi trotted after them as they entered another room. Alistair pushed open a large door, revealing a room filled with weapons on display. Puffing out her chest proudly, she declared, "These are my babies. Impressive, aren't they?" While she beamed with pride, Yu Sung-woo's face showed pure disdain. "They all look the same. Is this the 6th or 7th time I've seen something like this?" With the air of someone experienced, he warned her, "Just so you know, I already said I wasn't going to do this. And I'm not doing it on purpose." Alistair gave him a puzzled look. "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, all the weapons in the room began to tremble violently. Hammers, shields, spears, long swords, staves, even a pair of pistols mounted on the wall began spinning like windmills. Alistair stood frozen, her eyes wide, her jaw hanging open. What's happening? Babies?" Yu Sung-woo looked at the spinning pistols with amusement. "Not bad, they're like fidget spinners." Alistair collapsed to the floor, wailing, "Those are pistols, the masterpieces of my life. And you're calling them toys?" Yu Sung-woo awkwardly turned his head, trying to avoid her gaze. Meanwhile, the entire room was filled with the clamor of weapons calling out to Yu Sung-woo. Alistair slumped in shock. Nabi explored the room with great enthusiasm. And Yu Sung-woo scratched his head, looking embarrassed. "I did warn you it'd be chaotic," he said sheepishly. The blue sky and white clouds harmonized beautifully in a serene village. 10 years before the era of Thera, Yu Sung-woo was leisurely chatting with his friend, the one wearing a red scarf, while cleaning his belongings. "Theo, I'll really show you something this time," he said enthusiastically, grinning from ear to ear. Yu Sung-woo wiped his sword with pride. "This is the pinnacle masterpiece of my life. What do you think? Want to touch it?" Yu Sung-woo presented his beloved sword. But Theo accidentally knocked it, startling him. Panicking, he cried out, waving his hands dramatically. My precious. Meanwhile, his friend with the shield laughed heartily. That masterpiece doesn't seem like much. Does it? Typical of something you'd make. Feeling slighted, Yu Sungwoo used his magic to snatch the shield from the laughing friend, leaving him dumbfounded, holding both the sword and shield in his hands. He realized with a laugh. Haha, it's a set. The two companions glared at him, growling in annoyance, while he looked at them with disdain. This kind of squabble had happened 6 times already. Propping his chin on his hand, Yu Sungwoo sneezed, sensing some bad omen. Among goblin warriors, he was known by a particular title, the Item Slayer. Weapons and items always seemed to scatter around him. One female goblin wept bitterly, clinging to a red sword. Guys, look closely. It's not this man's fault, she cried. Pointing at him, she shouted, how could this shameless flirt really be so virtuous? Yu Sungwoo's face contorted into an expression of disbelief at her words. A flirt? Scratching his head, he sighed in defeat, feeling exhausted. This isn't my fault. I told you I wasn't going to get involved. Didn't I? He mumbled to himself, visibly frustrated, while the goblin woman fell to her knees, crying out loudly. A flirt, not just one, but all 88 of them. Reaching his limit, Yu Sungwoo finally snapped. Stop calling me a flirt. For the love of, I already told you. I didn't do anything. His gaze suddenly turned serious, bright and clear. Grasping her hand, he spoke in a sulky voice. You don't understand the heart of a goblin. He looked tired and uninterested. I've heard this for the 7th time already, he said. The female goblin, unwilling to give up, continued crying and wailing. Do you know how a mother feels? Marrying off 88 children to one man? She yelled, shoving him around so much that his head spun. How would I know that? He shouted, grinding her teeth in anger. She glared at him with a hostile look. Wait, you said again, so how many goblin items do you own now? Calmly counting on his fingers, he said, let's see, 100, 200, 300, roughly 500. Her jaw dropped, and her eyes widened at the number. 500, she gasped. Weapons gathered around him as he stood there with an indifferent expression. She exclaimed, and yet, on normal days, you don't even use any of them. Her gaze fell on the pile of weapons scattered across the floor, and a realization hit her. They're all going to be thrown into storage, left to gather dust, and never see the light of day again. She muttered. These were her children, made with love and dedication. The thought of them being locked away in storage felt like they were being condemned to eternal oblivion. A fate worse than death. Clutching her head, her eyes filled with panic and sweat beading on her forehead, she collapsed to the ground. Ack, she cried faintly, leaving him utterly confused. His mind spun, but he still couldn't understand. He looked at her blankly, unsure of what to do. He put his hands on his hips and said, well, goblin rules say you have to respect the decisions of the equipment. Looking at the weapons around him, he said with a carefree grin, so, taking them all isn't a crime, right? Randomly picking up the red sword, he unsheathed it, smiling as it glowed brilliantly. This sword, he said, is made from magic stones and soulstones of fire. Its flames can prevent resurrection and have very strong ice resistance. He then hefted a hammer onto his shoulder, examining it thoughtfully. This hammer simply boosts strength and amplifies impact. Simplicity is best, he said. His trial of the equipment wasn't over yet. He picked up 2 golden pistols. The twin dragons, he said, a masterpiece. Alistair spent an entire year and poured all his passion into creating these. Holding the 2 guns in his hands, he looked confused, unsure of how to proceed. Only someone at level 80 could use these, right? But Kong Hyuk is only around level 30. So it's difficult, and besides, they aren't suitable for me to use. The weapons glowed with a radiant light. Their gazes filled with admiration as they looked at him. With a proud expression, he said, for now, I'll take responsibility for keeping you all. But if a suitable owner appears, I'll distribute you immediately. If you agree, line up. A pair of glowing gloves moved, waving about to get his attention. He noticed them and suddenly realized something. It's not me, it's behind me. Huh? He turned to see his cat, Nobby, and called out cheerfully, Nobby, come here. The cat turned to him with a curious look. Meow? What's up, meow? Pointing to the pair of gloves, he said, this kid's looking for you. Nobby leapt over excitedly. Meow. The two looked up at the glowing gloves with joy. It's recognized you as its owner. Amazing, he said. Nobby immediately put on the gloves and showed off a few martial arts moves. prompting him to excitedly snap a few selfies with the cat. Meanwhile, the female goblin stood nearby, radiating anger and emitting an intimidating aura. Tears streamed down her face as she muttered bitterly. I had to make a kitchen knife for you people while my children are being taken away. I just want to die. At that moment, he waved his hand dismissively, grinning. Don't be so dramatic, we're not strangers anymore. Her anger flared as she clenched the hammer and half-finished tools in her hands. From now on, you're banned from entering my workshop. He crossed his arms, smirking as he teased. All right then, so how much longer until it's done? Startled, she quickly sped up her work. It's done now, she snapped, holding out a shiny knife engraved with the name Alistair. He examined it carefully. This knife, it's really good, right? He asked. She pursed her lips, looking at him with disdain. It's not like my other children. It's just a kitchen knife made in 1 hour. My feelings are complicated. Holding the knife in his hand, he smiled and stroked it, noticing the engraving on its surface. He turned it over, evaluating it thoughtfully. Nothing unnecessary. The weight is just right. And it's solid. This is bound to make delicious food. With a cheerful expression, he gave her a thumbs up and said, Great work. I can't speak for the others, but this one, I'll definitely use it well. Hearing that, she shouted, Use the others well, too. He chuckled, casting a spell as he tried to reassure her. I've already made agreements with all your kids. If a suitable owner appears, I'll hand them over. She glared off to the side, crossing her arms. That's better than leaving them to gather dust and storage. Fine. Suddenly, a realization dawned on her, and her eyes lit up. But, will suitable owners really appear? It's been 2 years, and I haven't seen anyone. He shrugged casually. There's always a way. In front of a store with a blackboard sign. The next day, he noticed the writing on the board. Challenge. The ruthless meal. At the hero's diner. If you successfully finish eating within the time limit, you'll be awarded equipment officially certified by the Master Artisan ISAC. Note. Only supporters are eligible to participate. Nobby danced around gleefully, admiring the gloves on its paws. Singing happily, the cat exclaimed, Just 5 more gems to go. And I'll dominate the earth. Meow, meow. A blackboard sign stood in front of a certain shop, displaying the information. Challenge, the ruthless meal. At the hero's diner. Successfully finish eating within the time limit, and you'll be awarded equipment officially certified by Master Artisan ISAC. Note. Only supporters are eligible to participate. People were eagerly waiting for the challenge, reading the information on the board. Meanwhile, he was kneading dough inside. The young girl Unha and the cheerful cat peeked curiously from behind the door. There are more people than usual. Huh? She said. That's right. It's because of the new menu. Meow. The cat replied excitedly. She blinked in confusion, tilting her head. New menu? What's the first dish? The cat's eyes sparkled as it grinned brightly at her. Suddenly, her mood deflated, and she idly played with a ball hanging from a nearby tree. Honestly, adults seem to like weird, terrible stuff, like coffee, she muttered. The cat, feeling offended, swiped at her lightly. If you pop the ball, I'll be so mad, it huffed, swinging the ball gently in her hand. She perked up and reassured the cat. Don't worry, it's a special ball my mom asked me to look after. The ball was actually a vibrant green sphere adorned with golden stars. It was called Beast Tamer and was a toy designed for monsters. Crafted at the request of hunters who treated monsters as pets. It was both durable and made from eco-friendly materials, suitable for those who raised mystical creatures. Delighted, she threw the ball forward. Immediately, the cat dashed after it, chasing the ball as it flew through the air. After a while of running and pouncing, the cat finally caught the ball. Triumphant. Oh no, the cat suddenly flew up, startling the little girl. With a meow, it exploded. She stomped her foot and rushed to the ball to see what had happened. Strange indeed, clearly, even if torn apart by a lion, it would still be fine. While running, she thought to herself, a fake? Behind the rooftop, a glowing figure peeked out. A handsome young man appeared, dressed in a suit with black glasses, Seo Taiji, Unha's bodyguard, level 55. His power was magnetism. He slightly lowered his glasses and, using the sensors in them, realized, level 80? I can't handle that. A crowd in long gray robes gathered noisily in front of a house. If that's the case, then it's a returning circle. The owner of this pet. It turned out to be Yu Sungwoo. Smiling brightly, this startled him so much that he shuddered. and his glasses tilted askew. The moment Sungwoo looked up, everyone was gone. He immediately flew out of sight. Sweating profusely, trembling, he hid behind a wall. Even if discovered, he had to at least pretend to hide. But still, Sungwoo was kneading dough frantically while people around him murmured, wondering what he had been cooking. Amid hundreds of people staring at the cooking table, Sungwoo confidently held a Bluetooth microphone and announced, "Before we begin the demonic cuisine challenge, here are some notes. This challenge will not determine winners or losers based on quantity. We only provide portions suitable for an adult." Pointing to a horrifying purple dish that looked anything but appetizing, he continued, "Therefore, we inform you in advance that the flavor will surpass all expectations." The rules were announced alongside a white dish. The demonic cuisine challenge had 3 rounds. If you couldn't complete the first round, you couldn't proceed to the next. The time limit for each round was 30 minutes. Cheerfully holding the microphone, he added, "If you succeed in the challenge, you will be awarded a work of art by an ISAC-recognized artisan." The crowd on one side stood intently listening. The entry fee for the challenge was 100 million won per person. This amount would be donated to a disaster relief fund. He was stunned when he heard the figure, 100 million. He dropped his jaw, his eyes filled with doubt, while the others murmured among themselves, 100 million won for a meal? That's unbelievable. A mysterious red sword lay on the pedestal, ready to be equipped after completing the first round. The sword was engulfed in the flames of a spirit. People drooled over the reward, thinking, if we spend 100 million for this, it's practically free. Some people sitting on chairs burst into loud laughter. Mocking, "Are you giving this challenge to hunters? Seems like you're determined to go bankrupt. I heard you're a returning circle, so you must have a lot of money. Looks like you're doing charity." Huh? Then, a confident step approached and sat arrogantly on a chair. It was Kim Chan-sik, the protector. His ability was endurance, where the strength of his body increased in proportion to his mental power. Crossing his arms behind his head, he smirked triumphantly. "I have the power of endurance." Raising his hand, he declared, "I challenge the first round of the demonic cuisine challenge." A voice from above responded, "All right, okay." Sungwoo, holding a microphone in one hand and stirring a pan with the other, announced, "Good luck to the participant in the first round of the demonic cuisine challenge. I'll start cooking now." The sky grew cloudy. Noticing this, his eyes became vacant, and he thought to himself, "Looks like the rainy season is coming. At this time of year, it's inevitable." His face lit up with a constant smile as a gleaming golden dish appeared, crispy onion pancakes with rice wine. At the cooking table, everyone was intently focused on him. He announced, "The dish I'll be cooking is from my previous world. Its name is Quack." The crowd buzzed. "Quack?" Pointing to his eyes with 2 fingers, he implied, "In the language of that world, it means, look." Still puzzled, he wondered, why does it have such a name? To clarify the confusion, he explained, "It's simple. Once it's cooked, you won't be able to take your eyes off it for 5 seconds. If you close your eyes even briefly, it will disappear instantly." The bewilderment only grew, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Is it similar to our country's traditional dish, gozleme? Or is it something like a flatbread? A fried dish? He raised a finger, demonstrating expertise. Exactly. It's almost like pancakes. But this dish is edible. The demonic cuisine, however, is a bit trickier to pin down. Scratching his chin in deep thought, he pondered, could any dish ever be as boring as pancakes? Suddenly, he clapped his hands excitedly and called out, "Bring it here." He playfully watched Nabi, who was carrying the ingredients. The white ingredients sizzled on the pan. "The history of cooking," he explained, "is the history of rice making, a process refined through research and deliberation to make food taste better." The fire roared brightly beneath the pan as he savored every ingredient. The dishes from Terra are different. They are a process of refinement, yet strangely unsavory. As the golden, crispy dish adorned with fresh greens neared completion, everyone began drooling. "It's just fried dough, isn't it? But it looks delicious." Confident in his skills, he worked quickly. Making something delicious is almost a crime, he joked, his eyes squinting in joy as he grinned widely. Turning a delicious dish into something not delicious, that's what proves a chef's ability. Finally, the dish was plated. "It's done." A man reached for his chopsticks, marveling at the stunning, golden dish before him. "Wow, demonic cuisine? On the contrary, I'm kind of looking forward to it." The moment his chopsticks touched the dish, His face lit up with delight as if the flavor was soul-stirring. "Come on, take a bite," he exclaimed. Two others curiously asked, "Is it really that good? Shouldn't we pair it with some rice wine too?" But unexpectedly, a gloomy atmosphere began to surround the room. In the darkened atmosphere, a mysterious young man kneading dough reflected a legend. The history of cooking is the history of making food tastier, where the talent and experience of chefs are accumulated over time. Continuing the tale was a skilled chef flipping a pan over the fire, recognized for creating delicious dishes. Books of secret recipes floated through the air, each cooking method becoming someone's recipe and eventually recorded in history. With a bowl of dough and two glowing potatoes, fried dough and pancakes alike used 100% pure potato starch. Crafted with sincerity and history, this was the key to making excellent fried dishes. With a mysterious expression, Yu Sung-woo spoke, "But in Terra, things are completely different." Holding two basins of water, he continued his mystique, using warm water to knead an ant starch instead of potatoes. At that, everyone around him was bewildered, looking at him in confusion. A man with a buzz cut and a clueless face asked, "Are you intentionally making it taste bad? Demonic cuisine is as expected. But what is ant starch?" Grinning, Yu Sung-woo held up a metal bowl. "This is ant starch from the Cornwall region. If you summon a monster that looks like a tree, you'll know what I mean. It's the kind of monster with green sprouts growing all over its body." Before anyone could interrupt, he squinted his eyes with a smile and added, "It's similar to potato sprouts, it's poisonous." At this point, everyone looked horrified and quickly covered their mouths. Another man, clearly angry, shouted, "If you eat it, you'll die." To reassure everyone, he declared, "I'm an expert, you won't die. Moreover, if used in moderation, it can boost poison resistance. This is a premium ingredient." As proof, he gestured toward a cheerful young man who immediately became grim-faced, his eyes rolling back, and saliva dripping uncontrollably. Another man screamed, "Look at him, he's about to die." Before the explanation could finish, the poor guy turned pale, sweating profusely as if he couldn't take it anymore. Adding to the tension, the chef continued, "The ingredient known as winter spirit, which I used instead of onions, is very beneficial for the body. I mean, as long as you can endure the icy sensation that wraps around your body." The crowd erupted in protests. "It looks like he can't take it." The chef smirked to himself, thinking, "This is worth it." Quack is the red star dish of Terra. A shimmering golden plate of food appeared. However, he thought, if I serve this to customers right away, the restaurant might turn into a funeral parlor. Covering his mouth with a mischievous grin, he added, "So, Wang Ji-hyun, dressed neatly with short hair, pointed at herself in confusion. Are you asking me to eat it?" The man and a smiling cat nodded eagerly, holding two plates of food. "That's right." Terrified and bewildered, she reluctantly picked up her chopsticks and stared at the four dishes in front of her. The moment she took a bite, she collapsed onto the table, leaving both the man and the cat dumbfounded. "Let's see how much is tolerable, what reactions occur, and if it affects health," he mused confidently, giving a thumbs up. Another man, drooling with anticipation, reached out with his chopsticks toward the golden dish. "A 1-star challenge or less, quack. It's about resisting toxins." His trembling chopsticks hovered as his face filled with anxiety, his eyes vacant, and his mouth twisted. The instant he tasted the dish, he fell face first onto the table. "I give up," he groaned. A loud announcement followed. "The defender with patience, Kim Chan-sik, has failed." The crowd gathered in shock, anxiously asking the trembling man what had happened. "What's going on? Say something quickly." With the last bit of strength, he pointed to a bowl of soy sauce. Everyone leaned in, curious. Soy sauce? What about it? It turned out that he had used the soy sauce as ink to write his final message on the table. "This dish is not of this world." The crowd was horrified. "What on earth does it taste like?" "It looked fine." Yet another person, ignorant of the danger, arrogantly thought, "Next up is me." One by one, participants fell to the ground. Meanwhile, little Unha, wide-eyed, was staring at a golden piggy bank. "Wow, the piggy bank is almost full." Yu Sung-woo crossed his arms and looked at her as she cheerfully played with the piggy bank. "Is that so? Customers leave hungry, but the piggy bank is bursting at the seams." Everyone lay collapsed on the tables. And he sighed. In the end, no one won today. With a sullen face, he racked his brain. "I worked so hard to cook an anti-toxin dish." A cute vision of himself appeared in his mind. clad in armor and holding a raised sword. Antitoxin. No matter how strong you are. A cute little boy was assassinated from behind by a mysterious killer, showing that poisoning incidents were still all too common. In a surreal, purple smoky atmosphere resembling a demon realm, the ultimate destination of adventurers and heroes, even the air itself was toxic. This is why adventurers and heroes prioritize acquiring antitoxin skills above all else. Returning to reality, he tiredly cleaned up the limp bodies sprawled around. But on Earth, he muttered, it's rare to find anyone with antitoxin abilities. Suddenly, he recalled something seriously. Since science and technology have advanced, wearing a gas mask works too. Frustrated by the endless cleanup, he started dragging the bodies with an annoyed expression. But if you put it on late, you'll still die. What if you're attacked unexpectedly? What if it breaks? If the gas mask can't block the toxin, there's no alternative. Back in my time, if we found poisonous water, we'd just soak in a tub. The little girl looked at him curiously. So why not just make it tasty instead? He knelt down kindly and explained solemnly. It's not that simple. Leading her inside, he patiently added, it's quite a complicated matter. If I were to explain it to you, it would take quite some time. Hearing that, she became even more intrigued, smiling brightly as she turned to him. That sounds interesting. Tell me more, uncle. Feeling embarrassed, he avoided her gaze and ushered her further inside. It's late now, you should go home. Inwardly, he thought, what if she's using this as an excuse to play with the cat more? Too adorable. The girl pouted, sticking out her tongue at him. At that moment, the bodyguard Taiji arrived, looking formal and serious. Checking his watch, he said, it's time to go. Unha frowned, slinging her backpack over her shoulder and softly asking, can't you stay a little longer? Taiji? The bodyguard replied, why, what's wrong? She stomped her foot and protested with teary eyes. If I stay a little longer, the cat will finish its bath and come out. Unha smiled dreamily, imagining the warm pads of the freshly bathed cat's paws. I can't miss that. Moved by her pleading, he relented. All right, just 30 more minutes. Her face lit up, and she clapped her hands excitedly. Really? Wow. Happily swinging her legs under the table, she sat beside the bodyguard. As Sungwoo carried a box past Taiji, he muttered, so this is the returning circle's restaurant. Huh? As long as we relax for 30 minutes. It should be safe. Just then, a notice caught Taiji's eye, Extreme Cuisine Challenge. Removing his black glasses, Taiji spoke up. Excuse me, I know the shop is closed, but can I participate in the challenge? Hearing that, Sungwoo grinned and replied, sure, we always welcome anyone to take on the challenge. In the yard in front of the restaurant, Nabi and Unha were playing together while Yu Sungwoo and a man were discussing something. The man handed over a ticket. Yu Sungwoo picked it up and read it. It seems you're only in your early 20s. Can we speak casually? The man nodded in agreement. Sure, that's fine. Yu Sungwoo carefully read the content on the ticket. The man, feeling awkward, adjusted his tie. I don't know what you think, but I don't have any connection with that artist. Yu Sungwoo looked slightly confused. I'm sorry, did you overhear everything? The man, slightly embarrassed, replied, I've gotten used to living like this. I've heard it so often that I'm sick of it. Besides, I've never even listened to any of their songs. Yu Sungwoo was a bit surprised. You've never heard their music? Is this a generational difference? He placed a plate of food in front of the man. The man calmly said, if something happens after eating this, it wouldn't be ideal. Curious, Yu Sungwoo asked, can I ask you something? Why do you want to eat what I've cooked? The man responded without hesitation. Because it's necessary. His gaze was steady, fixed on the plate of food. The man picked up the chopsticks. To improve my resistance to toxins. I've tasted all kinds of things up until now. Hearing this, Yu Sungwoo was impressed. That's quite a good habit, very disciplined. The man looked off into the distance. My mentor always emphasized one thing. Improving toxin resistance as quickly as possible. Looking back at the plate of food, he continued, but a year has passed, and I haven't made significant progress. Yu Sungwoo nodded in agreement. That's too slow. If there's no improvement in a year, it seems you lack talent. As he spoke, his eyes shifted to the plate, and he thought to himself, or maybe the dosage was too mild. The man poured himself some water, preparing to eat the dish. Slamming hard could hinder protection, he thought, but the host's dish, despite its strong toxicity, looks deceptively safe. Gripping the chopsticks tightly, he continued, That's why I can't let this opportunity slip by. Yu Sungwoo was taken aback by his words and looked at the man with growing interest. The man picked up a piece of the fried dish. I'll enjoy this meal. With that, he calmly placed the piece into his mouth, chewing and swallowing. But soon, his emotionless face twisted into a pained, lifeless grimace, accompanied by faint groans. Looking at the plate of food, his body trembled slightly as he thought to himself, "This is terrifying. The level of attack is too strong. How could there be such an aggressively offensive dish?" Yet his eyes regained their determination. He was right, stay calm. Find a way. Analyze the dish. The man examined the plate. Recalling the situation, the portion isn't large, which is why everyone tried to eat and swallow it all at once. He continued his analysis. That won't work. Don't think of this as food. Think of it as being under attack. My defense is 3. Let's assume the attack power of this fried dish is 100. Imagine I'm fighting a fried dish monster. He questioned himself further. Would it be better to take one big hit or 10 smaller hits? After careful analysis, he concluded, of course, taking 10 smaller hits is better. If hit once with a defense of 3, the damage is 97. If divided into 10 hits, each would deal 7 damage, totaling 70. Finally, the man made his decision. I can't finish it in one go. I need to chew carefully and maximize the time limit. With this thought, he put another piece of the dish into his mouth. As he ate, he trembled and let out faint groans. Yu Sungwoo watched with a cheerful smile and thought to himself, exactly, that's the correct answer. This guy's got it. Encouraging the man with a clenched fist, Yu Sungwoo also reflected on his own plan, the 30-minute time limit. Enduring stomach torment and physical exhaustion to gain toxin resistance. That is the essence of this dish. Yu Sungwoo smirked mischievously. If I reveal this truth, it wouldn't be fun anymore. So I won't say it. Eunha, sitting nearby, was drying Nabi's fur and brushing it. Observing the current situation, she remarked, Brother Taiji has grown up. He likes eating food that doesn't taste good. Nabi, enjoying the pampering, let out a comfortable meow in response. The man continued the challenge with great effort. A while later, his face looked a bit worn out, but he was beaming as he stared at the now empty plate. I did it. Yu Sungwoo and the kids clapped enthusiastically. Congratulations. Well done. The man checked the system interface on his phone, which had just notified him of a newly acquired skill, poison resistance. Feeling deeply grateful, he said, Thank you, sir. Thanks to you, I was able to gain this skill. He joyfully shook hands with those around him, celebrating. Amazing. A bit embarrassed, he reflected on what he had just done. So this is what it's like to earn a good dish. If that person heard about it, would they laugh? Yu Sungwoo reached into the storage room. All right, I'll give you a reward. Let's see, you're not a sword user. Are you? The man politely replied. I mostly fight barehanded. Swords. Well, maybe that one? He pointed to a sword on display. That's the flaming sword of Alistair. Isn't it? The man recalled his time at the workshop, leaving disappointed when he wasn't chosen. The flaming sword, selection rate, 0%. I faced trials before but could never obtain it. Yu Sungwoo, appearing utterly relaxed, said, Don't worry, we already made an agreement. Didn't we? The man's jaw dropped in shock. You mean, it's negotiable? Yu Sungwoo cheerfully explained. Here's the gist. If you want to marry a princess, you had to overcome a trial. When a hero wanted to propose to a princess, she said, If you wish to marry me, then capture the dragon behind the mountain and cut off its head. He continued with a smile. Confess, take the trial, succeed, marry. Doesn't that sound like the usual happy ending storyline? The man pointed at himself. So the equipment is the princess, and I'm the hero? Yu Sungwoo responded. You catch on quickly. Gesturing toward the now empty plate, he added, Eating the food I cook? That counts as a trial too, doesn't it? The man waved his hands in fear. This challenge is too terrifying. I don't want to compete anymore. Yu Sungwoo pointed at the signboard. Don't forget, today is just the first challenge. I promise to give these items to whoever finishes all the dishes. The man hesitantly asked, Really? In that case, does it include that item? I once dueled for it but was rejected. Yu Sungwoo pulled out a leather belt with a golden buckle. Is this the one? The man was overjoyed, hugging the belt tightly to his chest. Yes, that's it. He stroked the belt, feeling its texture in his hands. It's a magical armor belt if you chant the spell. The belt will extend and cover your entire body. The best part is that you don't need to carry around a bulky heavy bag for armor anymore. Panting with excitement, the man exclaimed, when protecting Unha. I can't have armor ready at all times, you know that, right? If I need to respond quickly. This armor is perfect. Yu Sungwoo smiled back warmly. If you like it, I'm happy too. The man gazed at the belt in his hands, overwhelmed with joy, letting out a silent scream of excitement. Meanwhile, outside in the yard, the two kids had finished drying off. Unha grinned mischievously, a plan forming in her mind. It's been more than 30 minutes. If things go well, I might just be able to sleep here tonight. She lay down, cuddling Nabi, and whispered, "Good night, everyone." The man turned to look at her. He saw the girl and the cat snuggled together, fast asleep, and softly called, "Unha." Seeing the two peacefully dozing off, looking absolutely adorable, the man muttered to himself, "We're going to get scolded for this." Outside the restaurant, the rain poured down in torrents. It was the second day of the Monster Cuisine Challenge. Yu Sungwoo scratched his head, his face a mix of resignation and disbelief as he surveyed the scene inside the restaurant. A group of people in fur-lined coats was enthusiastically hyping each other up. Is everyone ready? Prepare for the restaurant showdown. Let's go. Come on, let's do this. A man with green hair pulled out a packet of super spicy chili sauce from his coat. The Monster Cuisine Challenge, 15 participants. Yu Sungwoo looked at them all with a blank expression. So, you all dressed up warmly and came here. Huh? The green-haired man smirked triumphantly. This time, we're going to win. If we use tricks, will we get disqualified? Yu Sungwoo answered calmly. It doesn't matter, unless it's a performance-enhancing drug. That's a different story. The man grinned smugly, pointing to the bottle of chili sauce. This isn't a performance enhancer. He signaled to his team. Everyone, use it. Let's numb our taste buds. The participants each pulled out bottles of chili sauce and sprayed it straight into their mouths. The restaurant echoed with shouts and yells. Ah, it's so spicy. Yu Sungwoo was somewhat speechless at the scene. Chili sauce, huh? Not a drug, so it doesn't break the rules. With their spirits high, the participants sat down at the tables. Ready to begin. Let's fight. We can do it. Yu Sungwoo served the dishes to everyone, glancing away with a complicated expression as he saw their fiery determination. I know they want to get stronger, but this is a bit much. As they began eating, tears streamed down their faces. The sound of bickering among the men soon broke out. Move aside, Lee Sang-yoon. Gulp, don't block me. Get out of the way. The women also started complaining. It's freezing, so cold it cuts to the bone. Are these heat packs fake or what? Another girl chimed in. That's because this cold has magical properties. Meanwhile, Yu Sungwoo licked his lips while counting the checks in his hand. Business isn't bad at all. The restaurant door opened, revealing a cute little girl in a frog-patterned raincoat. Hello, uncle. Yu Sungwoo, busy tending to the participants, turned to smile at her. Unha, you're here? Nabi, upon seeing her, lit up with joy, his eyes sparkling. Yu Sungwoo gave a gentle smile. I'm cleaning up right now, so make yourself at home, okay? Nabi ran over to greet the girl with a cheerful, meow. Unha raised both hands to greet him back. In a nearby shop, two men were chatting. You've heard about it, haven't you, Mr. O? Of course, Mr. Park. You mean Mr. Yu's restaurant, right? They both looked toward the packed restaurant, their faces twisting into sly grins. Each customer pays an average of 100 million won? The tall, skinny man chimed in. That's just cruel. The short, chubby man added. Exactly. It's unimaginable. OTAE Sick continued. I can't believe hunters have to pay 100 million won just to eat those awful dishes. Does that even make sense? Park Dal-soo nodded and replied. Truly incomprehensible. 100 million just for a single item? What's that, Monopoly money? In OTAE 6 Cafe. Vain, the two men ranted angrily. That's exactly what I'm saying. Do you know how many cups of coffee 100 million won could buy? Shouted OTAE Sick. And my restaurant is the same. Park Dal-soo chimed in. On top of that, after deducting labor costs, ingredient expenses, advertising fees, and hosting costs, there's nothing left. A staff member in the cafe rolled their eyes, glaring at the two with disdain. These old men are at it again. Still seething, Park Dal-soo exclaimed. Running a business like that? Yesterday and today alone, that place had 35 customers. That's 3.5 billion won. Giving away 3.5 billion for free? OTAE 6 sat down with a heavy sigh. It's ridiculous. All of it goes straight into his pockets. Exactly, added Park Dal-soo. What if we frame him for fraud? The cafe owner, Anne, whispered cautiously. Fraud might be tricky, but what about food safety regulations? Lejong, another shop owner, leaned in and added softly. Oh, food safety regulations? The two men began scheming, ignoring everyone around them. I know a good lawyer. We need to plan this carefully, said Otae-sik. I have a cousin who works in food safety. I'll see if he can do an urgent inspection, said Park Dal-soo. Meanwhile, a waiter brought a customer their coffee. Here's your iced Americano, sir. Park Dal-soo made a throat-slitting gesture. We'll ruin him, I swear it. Otae-sik mimicked eating something and added. And we'll make a dish so inedible it's unbearable. You're free for the cooking part, right? The two schemers nodded in agreement. Spread the word. Hang up a reward for some extravagant item. Set the participation fee at 100 million in the name of charity. One said. In unison, they declared. And then we'll become millionaires. The two schemers began dreaming of their future. Isn't this like running a completely legal casino? Just sit back and collect money. Those stupid hunters will fall for it, said one. Just then, a mysterious customer approached them. The customer placed his hands on their heads and firmly addressed them. I need to clarify a few misunderstandings. He leaned in closer and continued. First, that restaurant is registered as a training facility under the special hunter law. It provides food under the guise of survival training. Therefore, it has absolutely nothing to do with food safety regulations. He pressed the heads of the two scoundrels together, making them tremble in fear. Second, for hunters, in emergencies, it doesn't matter if it's trash or monster meat, we can eat anything. Even if you serve the most disgusting trash imaginable, we'll eat it without issue. That means you'll be the ones going bankrupt. Terrified, the two scoundrels stammered. There's been a misunderstanding. The mysterious customer slammed his fist on the table, causing both of them to jump. He glared at them. Third, don't think poorly of him. He's not some money-crazed fly like you two. As the two schemers hugged each other in fear, the customer added, and finally, adjusting his fist, he gave them a sharp look. It would be better for you to behave yourselves if you don't want to deal with that excellent lawyer, or face an unexpected food safety inspection. After delivering his warning, he turned and walked away, leaving the two shop owners trembling. Panicked, the schemers yelled, let's get out of here. Quick, and bolted. A staff member, startled by the scene, stepped out and called after them. Boss, where are you going? The mysterious customer gently tapped the employee on the shoulder and gestured with his hand. An iced Americano. Make it 2 this time. The staff member glanced at the fleeing pair before turning back to him. She smiled warmly and asked politely, what size would you like? A few days later, in the hunter's restaurant, Wang Ji-hyun's loud voice echoed. What? She waved her hands nervously. Declining. The monster cuisine challenge? I'm not doing that. Yu Sung-woo chuckled warmly. Is that so? Well, never mind then. She nervously raised the menu to hide her face, avoiding his gaze. Deep down, Wang Ji-hyun cursed herself, thinking about how I was tricked last time. I really don't want to come back. But, there's no other place with food as delicious as this. Turning away, she smirked mischievously. And the owner is handsome, too. She looked at the menu with interest. Today's menu has carbonara. I really like that. Yu Sung-woo replied cheerfully. Lucky for you. I just finished making it. Surprised, Wang Ji-hyun looked at him. Standing up nervously, she asked, but, boss, have you gained weight? Yu Sung-woo, with his now slightly rounder face and double chin, looked startled. Huh? Touching his face anxiously, he opened his mouth in shock.